Good evening and welcome to the July Design Review Committee meeting. The Design Review Committee is a subcommittee of Historic Zoning Commission. The meeting is informal and designed to guide applicants through the process of obtaining a certificate of appropriateness or COA for projects within the city's historic districts in light of the Historic District Design Guidelines. Applicant participation in DRC meetings is voluntary but highly recommended. Changes made or suggestions taken by the applicant based on discussions with the DRC are the applicant's choice, but the DRC makes no representation as to whether any changes or suggestions made during the meeting will be approved by the voting body, which is the Historic Zoning Commission. There are 11 items on the afternoon's agenda. Item 6 is a brief 10-minute break. When your item is called, Ms. Rose or Ms. Hensley will make some introductory comments on certain ones, and then please introduce yourself and generally describe your item in about 3 to 5 minutes. Please focus on the specific points of the project that you want DRC to discuss. Due to the number of items, I would like to hold each item to about 10 minutes and certainly no more than 15 minutes so that we're sensitive somewhat to items 8, 9, 10, and 11. So if everybody will cooperate with us on that, I'd appreciate it. Having said all that, we're ready for item number 1, which is discussion of signage at 99 East Main Street. Jimmy Stevens, applicant.
Is
Amanda?
Mr. Stevens or a representative for this project here?
Doesn't look like it.
I can briefly state that this is an item that appeared before the DRC at its June meeting. There was some comments related to the color of the signage and asking for more specific information on that. So I believe that the applicant has provided requisite acknowledgement of the feedback from DRC. We would like to process this item if the DRC agrees for administrative review. So I know that the applicant is not here at the moment, but we would like to see if there's any questions or comments from the DRC that would allow us to move forward with an administrative process.
Amanda, can you describe I see the letters and I see what I think is the colors, but can you describe some detail on the letters? I think they're like Mandu's letters.
Yes, so the applicant has provided here a virtual Photoshop rendering of the wall signage on the building in relation to the existing wall signage. The lettering is proposed to be non-illuminated, a painted aluminum, which is consistent with the guidelines. The returns, which would be the sides where it connects to the building, would be a dark, he's listed a charcoal gray. And there is a backer behind the JC letters here, which is a bronze kind of color he's describing as a brass finish. And that is in response to some comments that from the DRC at the last meeting where it was more of an orange finish similar to the logo here on the side.
Okay.
The feedback from the DRC was in line with staff's comments that the lettering should be complementary to the colors of the building. So the size of the signage meets the guidelines, and the applicant has also brought forward a projecting arm sign, similar in style, detailing, and sizing to the one that was previously approved for the tenant down the way. It would be the same colors as shown on the wall sign.
Okay. All right. Any comments from commissioners? Mary?
I would recommend that it be
You're okay with the design?
with the design and
Yeah.
that it go forward with staff approval.
Any other comments?
Well, I would just say that that bronze background is something I've never seen, so I'm not sure if, I'm confident that staff will be able to see an actual sample of it.
Okay.
That's a good suggestion.
Okay.
Any other comments? Okay.
Well, we'll move forward with, I'm sorry.
I think it's a good idea to see the sample in case it's like a mirror type
Yeah.
bronze versus a brushed or an anodized.
Okay, so
Framing in the windows and such are an anodized type of metal,
that's a good point.
so something to complement.
Okay, so we will move forward with contacting the applicant to let them know that it qualifies for administrative review, but we would like to see a sample of the brass to ensure that it's more of a finished brushed look as opposed to a mirrored look.
Non-gloss.
Yes,
No.
not gloss. Victoria's taking great notes.
Okay,
Thank you.
that's all of that. We're ready. We're zipping through to number 2. Discussion of signage at 100 East Main Street. Jocelyn Signs applicant. Victoria?
Yes, so before we get started on this one, I do just want to go through a couple of images so y'all can kind of understand where some of these signs are proposed to be placed. So here you can see that there is one sign in that corner with 2 new ones being proposed.
Just a second.
Yeah, on the
Victoria.
left side.
Is an applicant here for this item number 2?
Yes.
Okay, great.
Yeah, why don't you come on up to the
Okay,
podium
thanks.
too, and as soon as
Emily?
Ms. Hensley talks, we'll let you share some thoughts with us.
Sure, I'll be brief, because I know you have a lot to do.
Let her, are you through, Victoria?
Oh, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
She's gonna orientate them to the building to help you out.
Sure, well, I was gonna
Yeah,
say,
yeah.
if she would like to
Okay.
speak first, that's totally fine. I'm just Emily with Jocelyn and Son Signs, I'm the applicant, so. But if you wanted to go ahead, that's totally fine too.
Okay, can we scroll down to the
Mhm.
pictures?
See right here.
Okay, so in this image, this is the front elevation facing Main Street, and there's already one sign at this location. And then the next image here is near the intersection at Main Street and First Avenue. And you can see there's a second sign at this entrance as well. That's that same second sign at the First and Main intersection. And then these next 2 images are just kind of orienting you to the new entrance for this storefront.
Here's existing.
Yes, there's the existing sign, and then where the board is, that is the new entrance as well, where they're proposing a sign.
Is that the bake shop?
Yes, the Franklin
Okay.
Bakehouse.
And here's another image of that.
Okay.
Okay, all right, that's it. Okay, is there a second address, or is it all the same address for the business?
I mean, I would say it's one, but it does have, so it's.
2
it's
entrances.
2 entrances.
So I'll just jump in really quickly to help out. So currently, there is the entrance at Main Street, the first image we showed. I'll go back to that. That's the main entrance. And you see the
Right.
intersection here and First and Main over here. And then this entrance that Victoria showed is the one that's facing First Avenue. They're maintaining this entrance. But they are also adding in a third entrance,
Right.
which is where this window is being converted to a storefront door. So you can see the current entrance here, the new entrance here. And I believe their suite kind of ends somewhere right here, if that, I think that's correct. So there will be 3 entrances.
Okay,
Okay.
all right.
And we are relocating the existing sign on, facing First Avenue North, just to mirror the neighboring Now sign, the business that says Now. I'm not exactly sure what that is, but it's just gonna be at that same level. It's just gonna move up just a tad.
So Emily, you want to explain this image?
Yes, that's the one I was talking about. It's going to move up, not, in between the band there on the brick, and not to be on the tan or architectural part there. It's just to move up to mirror, like I said, the neighboring sign. I thought I had included that picture, but I guess I didn't, and
You
I'm
did.
sorry.
Could you speak, would you mind speaking into the
Oh,
mic?
I apologize.
Thank you.
Sorry. So yes, that right there, like I said, is just to mirror, we're moving that sign up to mirror the neighboring Now hanging sign, just to make sure it's more visible, easier to see, because right now it's a little bit lower and harder to see on that side. And then, of course, we're adding, proposing 2 new signs for their expansion.
So for reference, this is the area where they're building out the new storefront.
Okay.
Yes.
So they're proposing a sign here, and
And
then
then-
there's a sign proposed here
Mhm.
that doesn't appear to coordinate with an entrance, correct?
I believe so, yes, ma'am.
Okay, are these all three, all these signs projecting arm signs, and
Mhm.
everything? Okay.
Hanging sign, and they all look just like what's existing, but with maybe a little bit of different verbiage.
So the guidelines recommend no more than 3 signs per building, which in this case, would be the storefront. So now they are proposing to have 4 signs, which would obviously go against the guidelines.
Okay. All right. Commissioners, any thoughts? It's got 4 versus 3.
Yeah. I mean, I guess the rationale for the extra sign, 4 versus 3, is just more visibility for the business. Is
Yes,
that
ma'am,
correct?
and for their expansion, yes, to show
Uh-huh.
that this, but I do understand that adding a third one would also do that. It's mostly just per the customer's request that they wanted 4 total
Mhm.
for the expansion.
Well, they've got quite a storefront presence now, Main and First Avenue. I
Yeah.
think that's,
Mhm.
that would be my,
Yeah. And then the decal type of signage, that's entirely up to the business owner, correct? Am I correct on that, Amanda?
Do
I
you mean
mean-
window decals?
Yeah, window
So
decal.
ideally, the way the guidelines read is they would have 3 signs per building, or as Victoria explained, a storefront. So they should not have very strong window decal signage unless approved by the commission, because that would exceed the count that is being proposed
Okay.
this evening.
So the count of signs includes the decal
Yeah.
signs?
And do each of these signs coordinate or identify with an entrance?
I believe that the third one, or excuse me, the fourth, I don't believe that, if I'm being honest, I don't believe that does.
But the others
Yes, ma'am.
3 identify entrance?
Mhm.
Okay.
So
And
it's-
Oh,
They
sorry,
can
go ahead.
have those 3 signs in addition to window decals.
No,
that-
ma'am. The way the guidelines read is no more than 3 signs. And so-
Period.
Period. So, in most circumstances, a storefront would accommodate a business, and there may be a business above, and that building with the storefront shares the 3 signs. They determine who places what signs. And that's to help with visual obstructions being limited on Main Street, and keeping the architecture of the building more prominent than the signage itself. In this case, yes, there is a much longer storefront than typical for the tenant. Staff would recommend that the guidelines be maintained and that the signage coordinate with entrances, as that's more typical arrangement, as opposed to having it located somewhere where it's not coordinated with, where signs are typically located, which tend to be entrances in our downtown area.
Yeah, and I would agree with that. I think too, we need to be considerate of what is coming in next door to the Bakehouse and what their signage requirements are gonna be. It looks to me like that one position of that 4th sign is very, very close to what that next business would be,
And I
causing
absolutely-
perhaps confusion to the consumer.
Which I understand that, and and she is absolutely right, it is with the 3. I do remember reading that in the code previously, so I do understand it was more of a long shot, but I wanted to try.
I had a question regarding the arm sign. Do you know how high that will be above the sidewalk?
I think maybe on my rendering, I thought it was called out, but let me see here.
And the reason I'm asking that is that I think traditionally so far, the signs that have been permitted have been more like a wall sign on that band. And now will we have an arm coming off a band? Is that what I'm hearing?
we've had some others that
We've
are
had
arm
others.
projecting arm signs
1799.
down there too.
So I'm not sure I quite follow your question, Mr. Lester, but what the applicant's asking is to take this sign that's already there and move it up higher. That would actually coordinate with the placement of the other signs on this same storefront, or same facade, excuse me. Now Massage is one that Emily mentioned. There's also SCOA that just added a sign there. And a lot of the placement has been dictated by these, and you can't really see it in this photograph so well. I'm going to skip to another. But the placement of existing lighting fixtures. You can see, I know this isn't turned the right way, but if they were to put it on this band just 8 feet above grade, which is the clearance requirement, it's right above a light fixture. So they're opting to hang them a little higher, and it gives them a little better visibility, but I do think that it's better that they're all coordinating and having similar placement with one another, as opposed to having some lower and some higher.
Thank you.
So will all the projecting arm signs be hung at the same height,
Yes, ma'am.
even the one on Main Street
Yes, that's what we were wanting to do.
and on Third?
I have a question.
Yeah,
So what's not clear to me is this is all one business, because I understood the expansion was kind of a wine and spirits sales, but it's all the same signage and the same branding.
Yes, there's no demising wall between the two, yes.
Okay. So they're not differentiating that portion of business from the
I
bakehouse?
do believe that the renderings show that they are expressing different messages. Now, we don't review content of messaging, but, and forgive me, these are all in different orders. I'm trying to get it to you. Like one, for instance, is bistro, the other is wine and spirits. So I
Okay.
do think they're trying to differentiate in that respect, but they're not truly different businesses.
all right, any other questions? So the real issue is 4 signs versus 3 signs. Is that, I think that's what we've got. So are folks okay with the 4, or you want just the 3? And regardless, I think this would, if we say 4 or 3, then I would think, Ms. Rose, we could get an administrative approval based on the design that I see.
We will not process 4. If the DRC is comfortable with 4, we would ask that that come to the Historic Zoning Commission for review and approval. But if the DRC recommends 3 and the applicant is comfortable with that, then we can move forward with an administrative.
Okay,
Yeah, I would recommend 3.
I would defer to the guidelines.
I concur.
all right,
I concur.
Okay.
that's
So,
good. Then we'll just, we'll stay with the 3.
so Emily, we can work toward administrative review but I'm sure you'd like to talk to your client about it.
I
Yeah.
will, and I've already pretty much discussed with them that this was probably the outcome. I just, had to
Oh,
go
of
for bat
course.
for them, but I understand from a code
Oh.
standpoint.
The only other comment I'd make, I can't see the one of now that's higher, but I do know, just as too good a customer at the bakehouse, that I have admired that being pedestrian friendly. So I don't know if I really think raising all of them to match each other would be a plus or not.
I understand.
Because that looks
I do like this location.
enormously attractive when you're
Yeah, I
down
think it
there.
does too.
They're beautiful signs.
Well, thank you.
They are.
They're very beautiful signs, so, okay, well, Emily, if you wouldn't mind talking to your client, and then get back to us, and we'll give you
Absolutely.
guidance moving forward.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate your time. Really do.
Thanks so much.
Do I need to stay any longer, or am I?
you're great.
Okay. Thank you again
Thank
for
you.
seeing me.
Thank
I
you for
appreciate
coming.
it.
Bye.
All right, next item is discussion of alterations rear deck at 410 Main Street. Josh Elledge. Amanda, you want to?
I will just offer that Mr. Elledge attended the Design Review Committee meeting last month to talk about rebuilding a deck that was damaged by fire at Walton's, which is at Main Street. The DRC did give some guidance to learn more about the building. The request was to build the deck back, but also add a roof and enclosed screened portion to the deck that on the second floor. And there were some questions about whether or not that roof that's desired could fall under the existing eave line or not. So Mr. Elledge did some investigation, and we have some photographs, and Ms. Garland's here, the building owner representative. So I'll turn it over to them, and I can flip through whatever you'd like me to.
Sure. Yes, when we left last time, we were wanting to see if we could take it lower, bring it down so that we would not have to build a 1.5-foot parapet wall. But we cannot because the windows are high as well as the door, so we only have 6 inches from where the current ledger board is, which is kind of at the end of that, that PDF
Sure. Just tell me when.
going.
Is it here? No?
It's like that, literally the last one, so you got it out of place. So you can see there where the light green is, that's where the current ledger board is, where it was anchored into the wall. So there's not enough room there to drop it down in order to get the height we'll need for the interior of the closed-in porch. So we have to go up in order to get 6 to 8 foot height inside the deck, the covered deck. And
Do you want me to go back and just talk through some of the photos?
yeah, absolutely.
Let's
So
see.
basically, you can just see that's.
I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's fine.
Trying to figure out. So this is the previous condition.
Correct.
Okay.
That is from quite a few years ago, and it looked a lot better then than it did prior to the fire.
So that's just demo. Keep moving, please. So where that red line is, so basically, we're proposing to build a small wood structure, a parapet wall, to elevate the height so we can put the rafters to go front to back. So it's only going to be a pitch of like maybe less than 112. So it's just a very small pitch, and that'll give us an 8-foot height inside there, so we can put a fan in, and that will same way there. That's probably a little bigger, so it's not going to protrude too much up, and it's going to have from the actual roof. It's got that white membrane roofing. It's going to cover that, and it's going to have a metal cap placed on top of that and on the sides. That's going to hide the white parapet, hide that white roofing. And then the rafters will sit on top of the parapet, so you actually will not see the parapet. So that's like those white you see there, those are the side parapet walls. And actually putting the roof on is going to cover that so you don't see that messy roof line up there. And that's just like a very extreme example of a parapet, how they have it kind of teeter-totting on the roof line there. That's just pull that off the internet, but that's like a 8-12 pitch. That's really extreme. Ours is going to be, like I said, very mild pitch. That's, if you're looking at an alley down to the right, 422, that's a parapet. So that comes up about 1.5 feet, 2 feet. So that's what we're proposing, except we're going to make it clean. So you're not going to see the white membrane roof. It's going to be capped with the same dark brown metal that the metal roof is going to be made out of.
And I'll just add, this pitch is much more
It's
steep than what's being proposed, so it has to have this closed end.
Yeah, so it's got that T1 on the side. There will be no siding there either, so it'll be open with screen.
So I'm just going to go ahead and go to the elevation set so we
Yeah.
can show you what it looks like as opposed to trying to describe it.
So we,
So I can zoom in more if needed. I don't want to zoom out so much you can't see the details, but
Yeah, so-
Josh, can you explain this view?
yeah, so basically you can see where the 6-bys come up, and then you have your floor joist. And then at the wall there, you can see that 1/6 section right there. That's the parapet that we're going to build up with wooden framing and wrap with metal. And then the metal roof will extend back just 6 to 7 inches past it, maybe a foot past it, actually. And
And this is proposed to be screened, not fully enclosed, correct?
yeah, absolutely, yeah, it'll be fully. The only enclosure is going to be it has a 42-inch railing in the photo there. That will be the only. That's per code. So
Okay.
other than that, it will be completely screened in. So it'll be visible. We're going to repaint And Julie wants to go back with the same paint that's on the front, so we're gonna repaint that rear and the side of the building.
And here is the view from the rear,
Yeah.
which I think is really helpful. You can see the slope here.
Yeah. Slope looks a little extreme there, but it just from that view. So basically, if we weren't having the discussion and you walk by, you would not even know that there was a parapet wall there. It's going to kind of just blend in with the roof. It's going to look really nice. Using that metal roof it's going to give it the feel like it belongs back there. It belongs in a historic zone.
In fact, you'd walk by and think, man, how do I get up there and hang out?
Yeah.
That's what you're
I
gonna
think
think.
that's true.
It's going to add character and probably be the nicest thing back in that alley right now. I'll tell you that much.
I have a question.
Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
The main building, the roof, does it not sheet drain off the back?
It does. So there's a gutter back there. And so what we're doing is the inside, we're going to have a scupper that goes through the parapet wall that's actually inside of the deck. All right, so we have a little cricket built, so it's going to drain to that scupper on one side, and on the other side, it'll drain off into an oversized gutter. So we got the scupper that's going to sit in there is actually will be inside the deck. The other will actually just cut the gutter like that's up there, probably replace it because it needs a new one, and use the existing gutter for the water flow.
Okay.
So we can actually take the downspout down through the deck, back into it goes underground into the same spot it was before.
So you've addressed relative to the size of the scuppers, relative to a rainfall
Whatever yes. Yeah, we've got 12, it'll be, a big 12, 14-inch scupper that's gonna be inside, and then a 12-inch hole that we're gonna cut through and flashed and
yeah,
come right
just
through.
avoid it ponding and
No, I won't
exceeding
avoid,
the structural limits of the existing building.
no, I don't wanna go back and fix it, so yes, we will build it.
Yeah.
Neither do
answer.
I.
Does everyone understand
Yeah.
what we just explained? Okay.
I got it. Any other questions, comments?
I do have a question. It relates to the building next to you, so I think that's McCreary's problem.
Yes.
Do you actually share the roof with them?
There is a small, from the picture, there's a small 1-foot parapet that, and it doesn't extend all the way to the back, so there's about a 4-foot length that stops, but it actually is divided by a small parapet between the two.
Of course, I was just trying to visualize how that's going to look with the other buildings. Are those basically the same building?
They were at one point. When my family purchased the building in the early 80s, that is when the wall was built to divide the two businesses between us and Bob Canada's property. But because of that parapet wall, if you're looking at it from the back, it does look pretty clearly two separate buildings. And the section of Bob Canada's does protrude out farther than ours. I don't know if that was an addition that they did later on, but it does pretty clearly look like two separate buildings.
And the parapet stops, it's at least 4 to 5 feet, so from the ground, you have to be back, kind of standing on the wall to actually see that little parapet. So,
Yeah, because I was kind of wondering how that transition would be
yeah,
made
so the
and how that
parapet
would
sits
look.
back, far enough back towards the front of the building that you can't even, if it extended all the way, we would cut another hole and have 2 scuppers going out. Because it doesn't extend back, it's gonna flow, we'll have the cricket flowing, so the water will flow.
So there's a divider on the roof that goes all the way to the end that separates that?
Yeah, so basically like a triangle at the end of the roof that's gonna push water to the side. It's gonna be built up a little bit, and the water's gonna go.
So
to the
something like a
scupper.
cricket, some kind of a cricket-like
cricket,
thing?
a
Yeah.
cricket, yeah, absolutely.
Do you have a picture that kind of shows that roof line and how that looks?
Between this, you're talking about McCreary's.
That's right.
Okay, in this building. I can pull up an aerial. so you can-
There's
Well, I
one-
think there's
It's
one,
actually
I
a
saw it
clothing-
as it went by.
And it's a clothing
you
boutique.
went by
That's
one.
John D. that's next to it. But Bob Canada owned both of those. So it's John D. with an apartment above, and then next to that is McCreary's.
That's right, that's right.
So I don't know that
There's one from the front towards the back in there, I'm pretty sure. I think it's towards the beginning of the,
okay. I don't recall seeing that.
oh, there we go.
Okay.
The fourth one, the fourth,
The fourth?
correct.
No, I'm sorry. I don't understand.
Oh, keep going then, it's the next, keep one more.
There it
There we
is.
go.
Okay.
All right, so that's the little parapet that divides both roofs.
Correct.
Or,
So our roof is furthest to the right, and then over that little wall is John D. and the apartment above it. And then there's another wall that separates John D. and McCreary's.
and where will your cricket be located?
It's gonna be right in the middle, so it will divert the water to both sides
Into your scupper?
into the scupper, right? And then the actual, there's still a little, she has another 18 inches or so of space between the deck and the next property. So we have area that actually from our water to flow, it'll actually flow on her property before it hits the gutter. It's shared, right now, they currently share a gutter. But where the building, where the deck stops, there's still another 18 to 20 inches before it's the next, which building, store?
John D.
John D.
Women's clothing, that's why you don't.
Thank you.
All right, any other questions?
Then is there gonna be a gutter on the back of the screen porch? I mean, on the alley side?
There will be,
Okay.
There it is.
I would recommend that be some kind of natural bronze color, just so it's not the first thing you see.
That's what we're planning for the
Good.
roof of the structure as
Okay.
well, so it would be very cohesive.
Yeah, good.
You know my taste, Mary.
Yes, I do.
Okay, so does anyone have?
I don't think so. Nobody
Okay.
else has said anything.
So as far as staff's recommendation, it is, replacing a deck that was damaged by a natural disaster, which is totally understandable. The reason it's coming before the commission is because there are changes proposed to it, particularly roofing it, adding the parapet to allow for the roof, and then enclosing the top with the screen, because it does change the appearance and functionality of the deck. The guidelines would support what's moved forward, especially if the questions that DRC had as related to how it would tie into the building and how it would address any sort of water concerns are addressed. I think with the submittal, I would recommend that the applicant include information about where the gutter is going to be, like show that on the rendering here, and maybe even provide information about the color so that it could address the concerns of the DRC. But otherwise, because it's not in a conditioned space, what they're proposing to do is appropriate, and I believe it meets the intent of the guidelines.
Okay.
The- yeah, the gutter it's on, actually, it just kind of shows on
The side view.
the side view.
Oh, sure.
It'll be on the far, there you
Yeah,
go.
so the gutter's gonna be
You see that there?
just on the
Okay.
front, yeah.
And I would just note it in your narrative, what color you choose, and I think that'll help.
Okay. Yeah, we got,
And this is all proposed to be wood, correct?
Correct.
Okay. Okay.
yeah, it's gonna be wood, the deck planks themselves have to be wood as well, because it has to be a nominal 2x for commercial.
Right. Any questions?
Yeah, one more, where the gutter's concerned in your scupper, won't that be on the back wall?
The gutter for the scupper will be on the back wall, correct. There's currently a gutter, the downspout going down now. It's going to follow the same line and go down. It actually goes into the ground. There's some black piping, so we're going to run it straight down where the previous downspout went.
Thank
So
you.
To follow the same line it was before.
I was just gonna say thank you for coming back to provide that extra detail regarding the necessity to achieve the roof incline that you needed, so.
Okay, anything else? We need to move on.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all. We'll send you an email.
Cool.
Thanks, Amanda.
All right.
Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
Thank you very much. All right, discussion of additions, accessory, and new construction at 334 Franklin Road.
Okay, I'll just give a brief overview of where we are and then turn it over to Mr. Hathaway, here is representing the applicant. So just an overview, this item did go to a special site visit of the DRC last month. And it was very helpful, I believe, for a lot of the folks who were there. Unfortunately, because it was a special called meeting, we didn't have the amount of attendance that we would normally have, and so the applicant chose to come forward again today to share that information. We actually have a video here to kind of walk through the property, so it could help get everyone oriented to the property in maybe the same way that the folks who visited were. So I'll turn it over to Mr. Hathaway.
All right, thank you very much. Mike Hathaway, 906 Studio Architects. I'm here on behalf of our client and Grant Gamble's office. You're used to seeing him. I've tried to add extra socks to fill his shoes. So our client has purchased this property back in 2010. They originally had Wyatt Hall, which if you've seen it, is a beautiful home. We were able to walk through it and just beautifully restored. In addition to that, there was a garage, a log smokehouse, a log cabin, and a dog-run chicken coop on property. So when they bought the property after doing several renovations of their own, they decided, or were given the opportunity to purchase a log cabin that they felt would help support the existing log cabin. So they did an addition back in 2016 that I think if you guys saw it, again, beautifully done in my opinion. It does not look like it's an addition, it looks like it's been there forever. In addition to that, they have a maintenance shed that they did in the rear to help maintain their 10-plus acres of property. I think if we can show that video, it might help those who weren't able to see the site kind of walk through it.
Sure. So do you want to briefly just cover the request? I want it to be
Sure.
clear. These buildings are already on site, and the request is to the applicant's requesting to seek approval of the addition and of the maintenance shed retroactively. Correct.
Right, and the
Okay.
maintenance shed, we would like to take the metal exterior structure off of the skin of the building off and make it a board and batten look of real wood, board and batten, reclaimed wood, so it feels more consistent with the character of what else is there.
So we have in the application materials that were submitted to you, a plan set as you would for any addition. The applicant was asked to treat this as you would any addition. So you see on this sheet here, there's the existing, and everything new is shown in the dark, and then actually some of this is new as well. What was original to the site was this cabin here. This was added later, but before historic zoning, and then all this connector and this were added later. So I just wanted to share that before we show the video so it can give you a little bit more clarity. And then there's the actual elevation sets that show the elevations and the materials called out. And then the same rendering, which is very helpful. And then to the plans for the shed, which is standalone. Okay. There is no sound, so it'll be kind of quiet.
And I will not sing.
Thank you.
So there's a little small parking area out front, and this is as you were approaching Wyatt Hall from the front. That is the approach to the garage for the house.
And the garage, that's not part of the retroactive?
No, that was
approval?
already there when they bought the property. This is the rear courtyard that's behind the existing Wyatt Hall. If you're like me, you've driven down this site multiple years and never knew anything. All this was back there, so it's really well concealed. So that's the approach to the original log cabin that was behind the house. Turning over to see the garage from the side.
That's the
And then
smokehouse.
That's the smokehouse. It was existing.
Well, I'll pause here for a second so you guys can get a sense of where we are. So here's Franklin Road. Here's the driveway to the property. Here is Wyatt Hall, the historic home. This is the garage. This is the smokehouse you saw. This is the cabin that it's not original to the site, but it's a historic cabin that was on the approach. And then here are the additions behind.
Again, that's a smokehouse.
That's an octagonal addition that was preceding the designation of the property in the historic preservation overlay. And the addition starts with this connector forward.
So that's a 6-room, 2-story log cabin. And then that white building is the existing chicken coop that was there, and then that's the maintenance building that we're proposing to take the metal skin off and replace it with a reclaimed wood board and batten.
It's back here. So this is back in front of the log cabin.
So that board and batten you see there would be what would be around the shed. And that's the connector between the 2 log cabins.
And Mr. Hathaway, to be clear, the applicant's not proposing to replace the shake material, it's just replace the metal
That's
material.
correct.
Okay,
That's correct.
thank you for the video.
Am I misremembering the site, at the site visit? Didn't he say that he was going to remove some of those structures, the smaller structures?
I'm not, excuse me, I'm not aware of that. I know that there was some discussion about maybe the
Right.
chicken
I may
coop
not-
area being improved, but I don't remember any
Okay.
removal.
All right.
I think he did say he was gonna remove some of the tinted,
I
things that
thought
had,
that,
like,
I
the
don't think I was
open
just
tinted.
dreaming that, but some of the sheds, I'll call them, that were back there. I thought he was gonna clean up, do some cleanup.
No,
Staff recalls that comment as well at the site visit.
Well, good, I'm not crazy then.
Structures, they're temporary in nature.
Yes, yes,
A
yes.
metal frame with canvas or other material covering them.
yeah, I'd probably say it's more of a cleanup
Yes,
than a removal, but
Yes.
yes, I think that is intent,
that's a better way to phrase it.
yeah.
So staff is working with the applicant through some zoning issues, but independent of the zoning issues, the applicant's request today is to get your feedback on considering the addition to the existing cabin and then also the new shed, as you would any other request for an addition or an outbuilding in light of the Historic District Design Guidelines.
No, I think just keep in mind, the original house is
Yeah.
roughly 28 feet tall, and we've kept all these roofs below that. It's about 18-foot max on the additions.
So staff's recommendation would be that the addition does exceed the recommended scale, height, and square footage of in addition to a historic building. With this being the historic building, the guidelines would recommend that additions be limited to no more than half the footprint and be of a comparable subordinate scale in size. Otherwise, it is not staff's interpretation that this addition meets those guidelines. With the outbuilding, it is a larger outbuilding, but given the size of the principal structure on the lot, as well as the other accessory buildings on the lot, the outbuilding can be supported as shown with the alterations to the existing metal being treated with a siding that would be more comparable to the historic district, like the board and batten treatment that Mr. Hathaway mentioned. Thank you.
Okay, Commissioner, comments? Let's talk about the log cabin addition.
Yeah. What are some specific dimensions? I mean, you said that it exceeds the guidelines.
I'm not sure that I have the sizing dimensions, but I can say that the existing, well, I don't
Help me
believe,
from a square
Have you got
footage
it, Mike?
perspective, if that's helpful.
I don't know that this is
The
quite
original
accurate.
footprint was 1,133 square feet, and our client has added roughly 1,200 square feet.
So, Mr. Hathaway, what you're counting original is this room and this room?
And the wing, the additional wing, all of that
Okay,
is original as I understand it.
okay.
Not original, but original enough to be considered part of the main structure.
Okay,
So just the kitchen addition and the cabin is what was added by this client, my client.
the kitchen addition being here.
All right, so we've got
the cabin
old
being here.
that's been moved to match up with old.
Right,
That's
right.
But-
that's the bottom line on this.
The log structure that was there was moved there.
Yes.
Is that
It was moved
correct?
there.
It
Yeah.
wasn't part of the fabric of Wyatt Hall.
Correct. I don't know when
The
that,
original log structure?
That's
so both-
there.
Both
What-
have been moved.
Both were moved there at different times.
The log structure that's there currently right here it's a 19th century structure. It was relocated to this property in the 1950s, I believe presumably to save it. So it was across the street.
That's right.
On the
That's
property
what he said.
where, near
Right.
where the McMahon House is located. So that, and then my understanding of this addition was that it was a standalone structure in the town of Lewisburg or adjacent to the town of Lewisburg, and that Mr. Woody, that owner, wanted to save it, so he relocated and built it as an addition to this existing structure.
that's right. And if you walk out there, in my opinion, it looks like it could have been original. It could have been the original log cabin that White Hall was then built in front of when they were building White Hall. So I don't believe it feels like it's out of place. And I know that there's other locations in downtown Franklin that have had houses relocated. Rudy Jordan, for instance, relocated a house to her site. So there is precedent for that.
And her house was relocated there.
Right.
I believe that it's easy to look at Wyatt Hall as an outlier. It's just not a common property in the city of Franklin. It's on that amount, how many acres?
10 acres,
10
roughly
acres,
10
right.
acres.
So I think there's completely visual forgiveness. And when you're getting the opportunity, I mean, when the situation is you're proving something after it's already there, one of the concerns, I think, is that everything we approve says, and it meets building, it's building compliant with the Franklin building code. So does that get considered after we consider, or how does that work?
I can speak to that, Ms. Pierce. So it's an excellent question. As I mentioned, we are working through some zoning issues with this particular property, and so it is the applicant's request that the Historic Zoning Commission consider it, and the consideration, if approved by the commission, would be conditional on meeting all other requirements to the city of Franklin to be eligible for a permit.
Gotcha.
And I think what's an outlier as well is the fact that there's been an effort by the owners to rescue some historic structures, and we don't see that very often. So it's a unique situation that I think does merit a retroactive approval, in my opinion.
I think that was somewhat of the consensus when we were out there, plus the fact it is, I mean, there's a big piece of property, and you don't really see this
That's
from
correct.
Franklin Road. So I think there is, along with Lisa's comments, I think that's, and Mary's, that it's worth considering as an exception.
And I think you could definitely argue it was really well done.
Pardon me?
I think you could argue that it was really well done in how they,
Yeah,
They treated it.
it's, never having set foot on the site, once I saw it,
yeah.
it makes a world of difference. Any other comments? Kathy?
I have a question. Why are you removing the metal siding and doing the batten board?
I think there was some concern that, and I know our client is very much about trying to make it feel like it's consistent with what's already there. So there was concern that having the metal there was inconsistent with everything else on the site. I don't know that that's a requirement of theirs, but they're offering that as a way to make something metal, more contemporary, feel like it's more consistent with what's already there.
I guess the other argument could be that metal buildings like that are pretty common on agricultural
Farm.
sites.
True.
And
Okay, anything else? Amanda, you got anything else?
I do not. So my recap from my understanding of the discussion today is that due to the small cabin not being original to the site, and the site having visuals forgiveness not being visible from Franklin Road and the size of the property itself, that the proposal would be supported favorably, at least by this DRC, the representatives here at DRC. Okay. Do you have any questions?
I don't think so.
And
Thank you very much.
Thanks for the video.
Yeah, appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks. All right, we're ready for the addition, number 5, addition at 408 Main Street.
Okay. So I will give a brief overview and then turn it over to our applicant. Hi.
Hello, how are you doing?
I'm great. You are-
Daniel Hunter.
Oh, it's good to be nice to meet you. I speak a lot of people on the phone and don't get to ever see them until they're at this meeting. So it's nice to meet you. And then we have Mr. McConnell here from Red Pony. So I just wanted to give a brief overview. This property, of course, was damaged by fire as well. And so like our previous applicant with Waltons, they had the same issues with the deck. So the deck has been removed, and the applicant would like to move forward with proposing a new deck. There are some lingering zoning questions, and I believe Mr. Hunter was trying to speak to our zoning administrator about those. But I will go ahead and turn that over to you, and then I'll get the rest of my comments.
Okay. So what we're trying to do is put back what was originally there from off the existing pictures. But we wanted to make some upgrades because the existing stair was just open to the public and open to the alleyway. So we were trying to enclose that to make like a more secure access point. It will still act as a egress stair for the second story. So we were trying to take the exact same design that we have right now and sort of just enclose the bottom because we believe that the fire may have started at the bottom level. So we were going to enclose that opening right there also. And then also to make the building, the addition, more fireproof, we were going to use CMU, like a 2-hour rated CMU wall, and clad it with the wood panels. With the floor plan, we changed it a little bit. It's still the upstairs seating with the new stair on the back of the building instead of in that corner. And then also downstairs would just be like a dry storage area. The roof will be sloping at 1 to 12, and it will be above the existing roof. So it would also shed to the alleyway with downspouts and gutters.
Mr. Hunter, are you suggesting that the existing parapet wall would be sufficient for that, or you are asking to add to the existing wall?
No, we're not going to touch the existing wall. We're going to add a new wall above that wall.
Oh, that's what I mean, excuse
Yeah.
me. Okay.
Mhm.
Okay,
A
so,
new roof above, yeah.
okay, so adding to the existing parapet more wall so that you have somewhere to
So
land.
you're doing the same things Walton's doing.
Yes, yes and no. So staff's comments would be that, you know, there are some concerns about this proposal. I did speak with Building and Neighborhood Services, as I tend to do with proposals like this. And this enclosure was done without approval initially, and then was retroactively permitted. And it's enclosed, so that it is there, that is what it is. The below section is currently screened and it has, mechanical equipment, things of that nature, but it's not heated, cooled enclosed. So the historic district design guidelines as well as the zoning ordinance would suggest that additions be done with materials that are comparable to the buildings, the building itself and the adjacent buildings. Because this would no longer be a deck and it's enclosed, the zoning ordinance would require that the materials be comparable, and the historic district design guidelines would recommend strongly that they be comparable. So it would be staff's recommendation that the addition be a true masonry addition as opposed to an enclosed deck with an enclosed space below. So it would need to be like an actual addition that's finished with brick to meet the zoning ordinance requirements. Further, I had asked Mr. Hunter to speak to zoning about the parking requirements, and I believe he's doing that offline. So the recommendation from staff would be that, such an addition would be finished to truly read as an addition to the building with brick. Thank you.
So are you saying the staff would approve such an addition? Or staff would recommend such an addition?
I would not recommend this move forward for an application at this time. I would recommend that addition to most buildings could be appropriate. It's just that they have to be scaled appropriately, be placed at appropriate locations. I believe that this addition could be appropriate if it were redesigned to be brick and have an appropriate roof line that works with it. So it wouldn't probably be a sloped roof as much as an extension of the existing roof line moving out. We just need to spend more time working with the applicant on this particular proposal.
I'm Jason McConnell. I was just going to speak really quickly about the slope of the roof. Speaking to the same issue that Julie Walton has, the water transfer between the roof of the current building and the addition has been problematic over the last 15 years, and so we're trying to address that via the architect. And so I think our intention to several things. In closing the space, we have the fire on camera, and it didn't happen underneath the deck. So we've had kids on the roof, through the holes, in the building, in the enclosure underneath. So I think Daniel addressed that. But as far as the material goes, I think the recommendation is not an issue on our behalf to do that. And I think the parking concerns that are being addressed should not be a problem either. So we're more than happy to make it look as if it is an actual part of the building.
Okay, comments?
I'm not clear on what part was, I know the entire structure was damaged on the back, correct?
It's completely destroyed.
Okay.
It's gone.
But, so this is what we saw before the fire?
Correct.
And then technically, you could replace it in kind. Is that what you're saying, Amanda? But the,
Yes. So what you have in the photographs were previous conditions to the fire.
right.
So it's all been removed now. And I can go back to the Walton's proposal, and I probably have some photos that kind of show the back of this building if you'd like to see that. But what they're proposing to put back is mostly in kind, with the exception of the bottom. You see, this is open like a deck on the bottom, but it has a screen here to hide like HVAC and mechanical equipment as required by the city of Franklin. So now, instead of using that as, places for those types of items, it would be an enclosed actual space for like prep kitchen and dry storage.
I see.
So it's actually an enclosed addition. So instead of being an elevated deck that's enclosed at the top, it would be a two-story addition. And
So-
you can see it from the side angle and then from the back angle here.
What was there prior to the fire underneath in the wood area is we had our walk-in coolers were screened by that fence. And so the condensers are remote to the roof. So right now, we're just enclosing the cooler space that we had prior to. That's the intention.
And the material that you were envisioning would replicate,
Well, originally, we were going to do the fire-rated CMU block clad in something to reflect this, But with the staff recommendation of brick, that's perfectly fine as well. That's not a problem.
Yeah. I
Well,
just don't
Mr.
know if the
Chair-
brick is gonna, I don't know if it'll be consistent with the other additions in the back there.
Most rear additions are brick. We have a lot of decks on the back of this particular block, but most rear additions are brick, like enclosed, heated, cooled space. This particular deck enclosure that you're seeing on the bottom of the screen here was not approved by the Historic Zoning Commission. It would not have been staff's recommendation to do a siding treatment similar to this. And so, in going back and doing a full addition, the brick would be more appropriate than this treatment, which is not consistent with the appearance of the buildings up and down these blocks.
And can we see what's to the left and the right, or not?
I can pull up the street view, but I'm not sure if I can actually
Yeah,
drive the
That's
alley.
okay, yeah, that's all right.
Mr. Chair,
I can go see it.
a comment I'd like to make is, this is an opportunity to do something that's more sympathetic. I think I would want to see the windows somewhat rethought.
Yes.
And the design, because I hate that you had a fire. It's awful.
I would
But-
agree.
But it is an opportunity to get something more sympathetic. So before it came to historic zoning, there is more than just the building material
Oh, absolutely.
that
And-
I would want
Design.
considered.
Right. And
Design.
I didn't mean to imply that that was supported. I thank you for bringing that up. I do think we need to look at not only the building material, but because the applicant was really trying to replicate what was there, I think, like you said, it's an opportunity to get the fenestration pattern and the materials appropriate to what the zoning ordinance requires and the design guidelines would recommend to be compatible with the neighboring area.
When was that addition put on there like that? I'm looking at our page 108 in our guidelines, and it shows pretty much an outside deck, and it was all wood.
It was,
2006.
yeah.
And then that enclosure is 2016. It was 2006, it was a deck, and then there was an arbor, and then
Yeah, right,
2016.
that's what I'm looking at. Okay, good, that was,
And I would say, I think our biggest concern is that we're trying to do this project in two phases, which is the original brick structure, because I knew we would have a process to get the rear structure designed and approved and all of that. But with our CMU walls, I have to have coolers to open the first portion.
I get
So
it.
until I get approval to do something, I'm kind of at a standstill altogether. So, I don't want anything that doesn't look good in Franklin, just like everyone here. So I'm happy to do whatever we need to do. It's just finding out if we'll actually get some type of approval to build a structure is probably my biggest concern.
So I do have pulled up, we can drive, quote unquote, this Google Street View. One of the alleys you can and one you can't. I can never remember which is which. But here's the existing, as you can see, and you see here's an addition here. And this is a building that fronts 4th Avenue. And then,
Visitor Center.
yes, and so driving through, close that up, you can see there's a conveniently placed truck in the way, but there are a lot of building additions back here. This is the only one that's enclosed that is not brick, and then we have a number of decks. The decks are exactly that. They're not enclosed. They're meant to function as outdoor areas. But you see, here's a small addition here. Here's an addition off this building. There are a number of additions on the alley side of the other block as well. But it would be staff's recommendation to allow the applicant to move forward. But I would suggest that the applicant work with staff to ensure that he's addressing all the zoning issues, and then maybe come back to another design review committee meeting to discuss the new elevation set. But staff is comfortable with allowing the applicant to move forward so long as they meet all their parking requirements, which is probably the biggest question currently.
just to be clear on the history, this enclosure in 2016 was not brought before the commission. It was just done and then requested retroactive approval like we just had for Whitehall.
No, it was actually
No.
not approved by the Historic Zoning
wasn't
Commission,
approved at all.
right?
This
So
is the
is it-
first time we've seen it.
Was it in violation then?
It was, and we worked through Building and Neighborhood Services Department, but it would not have been recommended by staff to be constructed to appear the way that it appears currently.
So to the other, my fellow commissioner's point about them having the right to have a like, to rebuild it like kind because of the fire, is that the case where the enclosure was not ever approved by the commission?
I'm not sure that I can answer that question, but I do know there was a permit issued, correct,
Correct.
by the city. So the city did permit it for construction compliance retroactively.
But there
So-
was no but Historic Zoning Commission approval would have been required for that under the city's guidelines.
Yes, and
that
it's
was never
definitely under the
obtained.
current zoning ordinance, yes.
Right, okay.
And I do think there's an opportunity to address this issue with the window.
Yeah, that view is very helpful, actually.
The window that's to the side, to the right of the deck,
Right here?
yeah, that's already been enclosed.
Okay.
It's been with brick, yes.
Yeah, it's just if this had gone through historic zoning, as would have been, it should have been required, then it would not have rested on the fenestration of the historic building. We would have asked that that be scoot in some. So it may be that this is an opportunity to design an addition that would meet the requirements from
Well, I
2016.
think Mary's
forward.
comment was spot on. This is an opportunity.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Is there a reason
get
it
it
wasn't
right.
brought before Historic Zoning back in 2016?
I honestly, when we were talking about this today, about the permit and everything, I hired the property owner as a contractor who did the work, and he ran point on the project, and so I was a little bit surprised myself today, so
Okay.
apologize for that.
Fair enough, just curious. Okay. So it really is, from my view, a fresh look at it, because while I have serious concerns about the whole recreate it in like kind when it wasn't ever brought before the commission, but
Did I understand correctly, though, that the building permit was issued post-construction?
Yes.
Okay.
okey dokey. All right, any other comments on this before we move, so we can move on?
So to recap, my understanding of the comments is that, an addition could be supported, but we would need to look at, a new design that is of stone, and, I'm sorry, of brick, not stone, please, not stone. And with appropriate window rhythm and spacing of openings that you would see on like additions in the downtown area. Yep.
And with the parking, I was looking at chapter 10, section B, remote parking. It was saying that if there is a parking garage that is within 1,320 feet of the main entrance, that you can use that. I was wondering if that could be approved, because that's like our biggest problem, because we can put the rooftop units on the roof and turn the brick facades.
Kelly, you,
Sure, parking is something that we'll address through zoning administration and the BNS department. It really is the purview of this group to review that, so we'll work with you on a staff level on that.
Okay.
Thank you.
And I think I would personally like a little more feedback from staff or the applicant, however, about the take on the effect of the fire under our provisions. Because I think we're all familiar with what happens if you've had something approved and then you're replacing it because of a disaster like the Walton's deck. But here, this is a little bit different situation, even though a permit was ultimately approved because it was never brought before the commission. So I'd like a little more feedback on that. Not today necessarily, but just that's something I'd be interested in hearing more about.
We
I
can
would
work with the
concur with
zoning
that.
administration
Yeah.
to get more information
Yeah.
to you on that. Thank you.
For maybe to have council part of the conversation.
Yes, just so we understand how that plays into the request?
Well, from my perspective as staff, I'm reviewing, the request is an addition. So absent of any addition here, if you just consider it as no addition was ever built, how would you review an addition? And so my guideline recommendations stand for that.
Okay.
Okay, so an addition could be supported if, number one, it's on the property. There aren't recommendations for non-residential as far as square footage relationship, but we do look at scale. We do look at the window and door patterns on the building. We look at materials. We look at, trying to preserve the architectural features of the historic building, so hence my comment about the window. So my comments would still stand even if there wasn't this extenuating circumstance.
Okay, I think that's it for this one, so thank you guys very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, we've got a 10-minute break scheduled here, but I'd like to move on and try to get another one or two in here unless,
We may need to go ahead and do it since we advertised it that way.
okay. I certainly don't want to go out of order.
It's a good idea,
That's
Mr.
fine, all right. We'll take a 10-minute break then.
All right, thank you.
Oh, here we go. All right. We're now back in session. All right, the discussion of alterations, window replacement at 238 Public Square, Chisel Workshop. Applicant. Amanda, you have any opening comments on this one?
I do not. I'll turn it over to our other Amanda.
Hello, I brought Michael Lee with me. He's gonna get us started.
I'm going to get us started. It's, I guess, called the old terminal building, Mary? It's the old terminal building, and the owner has been having trouble with the heating and air and keeping the upstairs cooled. So they put a new unit in, and both tenants are still unhappy with the way that the environment inside the building's going. So I'm going to let Amanda take it from there.
I will, let's see, okay, Shorty here. There we go.
This is a different setup.
It
and we're
is. I feel
accustomed to
weird. I
last
see
year.
people's faces. You know, it's great to be back in the room as opposed to on a Zoom call. I can actually point to things too, and you'll be able to see. I know, a little
That's right.
corner. I'm still short. Still have to mess with the mic. Okay, so yes, Michael called me once he has been doing some work trying to get the tenants into a comfortable level. So this is the classic, you know, window discussion of we have some historic windows, we have some not historic windows, and we also have some tenants that are extremely uncomfortable from an HVAC standpoint. I have been in there, especially in the front office, quite a bit, and it is very toasty in there. The back tenant is also, she's not too comfortable as well. So I'm going to go through these by sections really quick and kind of give you the overall from the assessment. I will give a disclaimer, I do not have any exterior photos at this moment. Every time we've looked at doing it, the weather hasn't been cooperative. So that is one of the goals before DRC is to take some exterior photos of the windows. So in the front, looking at this slide, the 3 windows that are circled here, the sashes have been replaced. I can tell because the lumber's dimensional, like you can see in these photographs. I'm trying to use my finger to point out a few things, but you can just see they're very straight and stick. The weights have been cut. They still do not operate, but it is very much dimensional lumber. You can see that from the inside and the outside, and that's indicative of all 3. So at some point in time, all 3 of those windows have been replaced. They do not have wavy glass. You can go to the next slide, Amanda.
So, Ms. McCurry, just to clarify, are you suggesting the entire window has been replaced, or they have had sash tacks?
It's the entire window
Okay.
has been replaced.
Okay,
yes.
for these 3
For
here.
those 3. The
Okay.
sash pack is on the other side.
Okay, okay.
So this window has not been replaced. It is, at some point in time, I do think the glass has been replaced. I took some pictures with the glass, like the one with the cars, because it's very, very clear. It's not wavy at all, that top left one. The frames are historic. We have quite a bit of rot on this frame. In this corner, I did not want to dig out any further, but you can kind of see in the paint, see the indentures in the paint all along the right side on that bottom right corner. All of that is soft. And so I poked through more and more, and then I just kind of stopped because I don't want to cause any more trouble at the moment. So this window has quite a bit of signs of water infiltration. Even that top middle, you can see that bead of rust or nasty water that's coming in from when it rains that's staining the window. And you can go to the next slide. We've definitely got water coming in through that window. You can see that the plaster's coming off along the top and how we have a lot of separation. And we can even see the water indicative on the trim. So that is the only window on the front that has some historic components to it. Like I said, I don't think the glass is historic. I do think that might have been replaced when the other sashes were replaced, the other windows. But we do have quite a bit of water. So for these windows in the front, we would like to replace them. That is our recommendation, and I know Michael and his crew are going to have to work too on some of the weatherproofing to get the water to stop too as we replace them. So I do think some of the trim on the outside too is going to have to be replaced, and I know Michael in the past doing these types of things will look at doing some in-kind trim replacement pieces. If we need to get knives cut to have custom pieces, we will, but we've got to figure out a way to stop the water coming in as well. So that's the front, or what I consider the front.
So on the side windows, we're going to go through each of these kind of in section. There's 6 sections. Very common in most of these, the bottom sashes have been replaced. I do think they've been replaced, they're just replaced with the wood sash. They do not have wavy glass. The far left is the sash pack, Amanda.
Right here?
Yes, on top and bottom. So that full window is a sash pack replacement. So we'll go through each of these, and they're all very similar. So on these, the bottom sashes are newer. They do not have wavy glass. They're dimensional lumber. The top sashes do appear to be older. So this is where we've got that kind of odd circumstance that we've got some pieces and components that are historic and some that are not. The weights have been cut. There's no weights in any of these windows. And we can see, as best we can from the street, some signs of deterioration on the outside. You can see it if you zoom into these pictures on the top sash. But we need, I do realize that's a hole in our photos here. So you can scroll.
You mean you just can't get up there?
I know. I mean, I just didn't want to climb up on a ladder when it's summer humid rains. And get Michael's crew.
Next slide or
Yes,
same
the
one?
next slide. And that's the first 2 windows. I try to put a key plan so you know where we are at all times.
And just to get everyone oriented, this is the entrance. It's kind of on the corner there.
Of the shoe store.
As you get onto Public Square.
So the same thing with that middle section of windows. The bottom are non-historic dimensional lumber sashes, and the top are do appear to be more historic. This is the only one that did have the weight in place. On the left window. And then the rear window is, you can see on that, on the right window here, you can even see that little OG edge, definitely something that was probably done in the 90s with that window replacement there. And then the left window is the sash pack. So that one has the metal jam liners and the sash pack replacement. So that one is not historic in the least. And then we have a window in the rear of that office as well. It's got quite a bit of tree coverage from the back side of it. And from the inside, again, same situation. I think all the bottom sashes have been replaced. So we're just here today to have a discussion. I think the owner, given their tenants' complaints and maintenance moving forward and knowing, especially with the front, we've got some major water issues, they're looking for a full replacement of the windows on the second floor of this building. I wanted to show you some of the pictures we have and just kind of open it up for discussion, knowing we've got this odd situation where some are historic and some are not. Here we go.
Okay, comments? Window man.
All right, Mr. Lassiter. I know who's going first.
Okay, just a few comments. First a question. So how many, this is on the front, how many historic windows do you think exist and could be fixed?
So the front, 3 of them are non-historic.
So 3, so of the 4
Go to,
that we're
Amanda, can
seeing-
you go to this next slide?
Sure.
So the 3 circled are non-historic.
And you believe one of those is?
And then that one is, but that's the one that has some major water infiltration with the big hole in the sash. I think that one has been repaired in the past, and then that's why it's now failing. That's the one that's on the 3rd page, Amanda. That's the one, because that's the one that's more historic. And you can tell that from the front and the back. It does not have this wavy glass
Of course,
on either sash.
and glass
None of the
gets-
fronts have wavy glass.
Glass gets replaced over time.
It does.
cracks, whatever.
So my guess is when they replaced those other 3 windows on the front, they replaced the glass because maybe that sash was okay on that one window, and now at this point, it's failing.
Of course, that what you're showing there with that small amount of rot, to me, is not a major issue.
It goes, I didn't keep poking holes.
She stopped.
So you can see it, see how it traces up, it goes up.
Yeah.
There's rock to the left.
Yes, so I stopped poking
I-
holes.
I just personally know that can be repaired. That's not a major issue. If your other windows are non-historic and you want to match them to the historic profile of the existing one, that sounds perfectly reasonable to me. This building, just, you know, you mentioned terminal, it was the interurban, so the
Interurban, yeah.
Franklin Interurban Office. In the bottom section, it was actually owned by Moscow Carter, and his daughter was Rosalie. She was the first female dentist in Franklin. And their office was on the second floor. So just to give you a little history of that building. So on the side, so let's talk about the side. So how many of those do you think are original?
I think the top sashes of some of those are historic. I need to get in, I think it's 4 of them that are historic, the top sashes of them. The far left one is definitely not. It's got the aluminum sash packs. Yes, the far left one. That one's 100%. There's definitely wavy glass on the top sash of those 2 furthest to the right. The other ones I had a little bit of trouble accessing the day that I was doing my visit, but from the outside, I think they are.
Are they truly arched? Is that a
They
true
are.
arch at the top?
They are. So the front window and the rear window is just arch in the trim. The side windows are truly arched tops.
So that is pretty certain.
It is.
they're-
It's
they
significant.
are Original. Well, could you just have sashes made for the bottom that match the profile?
It's a Michael
I'm
question.
not sure, I have to consult with our window expert. I'm not sure, I'm really not sure. She was pretty strong about a total replacement, but I can't argue her point. But, you know, I asked her, should we do sash, and she said she thought total replacement, but I can't tell you why.
I know as a person who appreciates an old window in an existing building and has a propensity towards preservation, I would recommend changing your bottom sash to match your top and profile and keeping your original, as many original windows as you can.
We're on the side now, we're speaking of the side. The front's a different issue, right?
Well, the front, I would advocate keeping the one and having the others match it.
So that one window is
repair it.
the one we're also getting a lot of water coming in. So
And
that
repair it.
one would be.
And it's just the bottom sash on that one too, isn't it?
No, it's the top and the bottom. So that's the one that we have a major, the tenant is actually jokes about it. He's afraid the front facade's gonna fall off because of the water infiltration. So if you can see in the, it's kind of hard to tell in the picture because it's dark, but we have plaster failing at the top through there, and they think water's coming in through the window. Like, we're definitely gonna have to take the whole window out to see what we're dealing with, but there's a lot of rot on the bottom, the top of the sash, and the trim work around that window.
And you may have more issues than just the window.
We may,
Yeah, well, we're ready for that.
yeah, that's him. I just wanna make sure they look good.
But to Amanda's point, on the front, everything will have, there's so much, in the window you're talking about,
The left one.
the original window, there's so much, the picture doesn't do justice to the rot. So we think there's rot inside the frame, so we have to pull everything out to assess how bad it is. It's been taking water for a long time, it's in very bad condition. I'm not afraid, but I think that it's mitigated down into the whole structure.
Cavity.
So the weight pockets, you mentioned those, they still exist on that window?
No.
They do not exist on these windows. They do exist on the side windows.
And you still think it's original
On the side?
on the front, without weight pockets?
I don't know how much, it's just not the same as the rest of the windows. The rest of the windows are clearly dimensional 1x2 pieces that somebody built, and the glass has been replaced in this one. I assumed it was original due to the amount of rot, but that might be something good for me to take him and do a little bit more exploratory work in that window and see kind of what we're dealing with. Because for me, looking at it, you know, when you get all those layers of paint too, that's kind of like a telltale sign to me of like, well, this is clearly old. And the putty glazing, it doesn't have the putty glazing, that's clearly been replaced, but the glass has been replaced. So I assumed with the layers of paint that it was a more historic window and the level of rot. So that was kind of what I used as my evidence for that one in the front.
And since you just show us that one picture, you know, in the bottom
Yes.
sash in the right corner.
I'm gonna start poking my
If
way
there's
up.
more rot on
Yeah.
up, when you come before the Historic Zoning Commission, I would appreciate seeing more photographs.
Okay, we'll do that.
And I would say too that, I mean, in the old days, before I met Brian, I would say that, I would immediately understand the practicality of replacing, but I would need to see more evidence of what we have here.
Right.
I know a lot of it is what you believe based on your experience, and I trust that. Whether it's a window expert that you can bring before us or bring some kind of documentation.
Right.
I think that's important, especially for a building of this nature.
Totally
It's
understand.
so visible, not just in the front, but also on the side.
And I know the side is where it gets to be, because to me, too, Michael and I were having these discussions, you know, I see the wavy glass in the arch top. I recognize that. So I understand.
I'll say one more thing. It's an interesting thing because the value of the historic windows. And, you know, I do restoration all the time, and we always try to leave the historic windows in place. And I think the size of these windows as they relate, when you are inside, they take up 70% of the exterior wall space. So we got all this sun and heat coming in. And the tenants are miserable, and we put new HVAC in, it's still, I mean, they could put curtains on, but we can't tell them you have to use window. They'll leave or something, so that's why we're here.
Well, when your owner indicates that they want replacement windows, are they talking about replicating the windows, or what are they talking about?
Yes, we are looking at custom wood windows.
They're so custom and so specific that they take 6 months to come out of the factory at this point.
So we're looking at custom historic profile windows.
They're expensive.
There is a remedy to help with the energy, and that is to put a type of storm window on the inside. Now, you could put one on the exterior, but you'll put one on the inside, which is recommended, I think, mainly by our guidelines, and that would help tremendously with the comfort of your tenant.
Are these proposed replacement ones, even though they are nice and custom and wood and represent a historical profile, are they operable?
They will be, yes. Yes, ma'am. Operable, and they, you know, typically too, even with some of the brick mold or trim detailings, we get knives cut to match the detail and profile.
And I'm not sure,
That's
but I
very
was
common.
here last year at a meeting, and we had a similar issue, it was before the virus, but we had a similar issue with the Inman building. The
Absolutely.
buildings were-
That's what I'm sitting here thinking about.
Yeah, it was a very similar situation, there was some historic.
We
stuff.
replaced all the windows, I
Right,
think.
yes.
Across the top.
And so when Mr. Billington called me up, I said, well, I know that we had a similar situation on the Inman building, and maybe they'll work with us.
And the Inman building was not ideal. It would have been nice to have saved as many historic windows as we could have.
But it was pretty well documented that those windows needed to be replaced. I think they took some of them out and had some pretty good photographs of what rot existed. So,
Amanda, I think it would help me to weigh the scales of like how much of the historical portion of the windows you can save.
Absolutely. I understand that.
versus a full
Sure.
replacement.
I mean, that's where I'm coming down is if we can save some,
Absolutely.
we want to try to
Right.
save
And
some.
certainly the glass.
We hear that.
Yep, I
So,
understand that completely.
And that's my point as well.
And so we might get to where we're being able to save 3 or 4 of the units
Yeah.
that are worth saving, especially the ones with the historic glass. And so
Yeah.
when we come back, we'll have a good, clear
Okay.
presentation.
Knowing that you're not going to know until you get those windows out what you're going to run into.
I
Well, yeah,
know.
but that doesn't really affect, whether you're repairing them or not. I mean, it doesn't, you know. But once you pull, even that one on the right in the front, once you pull it out, you don't really have the window anymore. I mean,
Yeah.
it's, you can put it back and nobody could tell whether you took it out or not, so. Except for the old glass, which there's none in the front, so.
But you think with either repaired, replaced, whatever, that's going to solve their problem?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do. I'm convinced, because first step he made was to get an HVAC and address it from the interior.
Yeah.
And I know both clients, and I've talked to them both myself, besides the owner, and he's not making it up. They're upset.
Yeah.
They're-
Well, I
It's
I
just
don't-
hot, it's just
I
hot in
understand
there.
that.
It's hot in there, and there's too much sun coming in, so.
But window treatments can be remedies
Yeah.
too.
Yeah. We'll tell them. But I think I don't think we're that far off from you guys.
Yeah.
I think
Okay.
when we
Yeah,
come
I
back,
do
All right,
too.
okay.
I think when we come back, we'll have a presentation
Yeah.
that's fairly acceptable.
So just to recap, The request from the commission, based on the guidelines, would be to try to preserve as much of the historic material as possible. So we'd like more information through a full survey. Ms. McCray has done these surveys in the past, and I know she'll do an excellent job putting something together. It's just allowing the time and the environmental conditions to allow for that. So we'd like to see more photographs and a full survey on each of the windows, and then your analysis of what could be saved versus what may need to be replaced. Further, the application deadline's this Friday, so I'm
Right.
not sure if you might be eligible for this round, or you may want to look into September.
We'll talk and we'll let you know.
Okay.
Sounds good.
Any other?
Okay.
All right.
Thank you,
all.
guys. Always appreciate it.
Let's see, looks like you got another
I'm still
one.
staying up
Amanda, you
here.
can
Michael's
stay right
leaving
up
me,
here.
though.
All right,
He's like, "Peace
alterations
out."
in dormer construction at 728 Fair Street.
I know, I just say. So we are working with our client here at 728 Fair. It is the little yellow cottage with the green metal roof. It currently has an existing second floor, and it does not have a means of egress out of the bedroom up there. So I initially met with the client. We're looking at doing some interior renovations that are not going to affect any windows or anything exterior, and we discussed the second floor not having a means of egress. It gave me a little bit of concern. So we would like to look at putting a dormer on the left side of the property, that side. The front side, that chimney that's in there goes through the second floor. I didn't feel the front was appropriate location. So looking at the left side, the stairs, you'll see this in the plan, but the stairs go up on the right side. So this is the existing, or the floor plan on the first floor. We've got the living room and the classic living room, dining room floor plan with the stairs that go up. And then we have an existing second floor that is up there, and looking at adding a dormer on top of that pyramidal style with some egress windows. So from a design standpoint, keeping with the hip roof style, keeping with the metal roof, keeping the details and the size of the siding the same. And you can scroll to the other elevation. So we do keep that dormer 2 feet off from the outside of the first floor, and those are the smallest size egress windows. So they're casements, because as you know, double hung to get egress tend to be rather large. So looking at doing 2 small scale egress windows, the smallest size we can get that meet egress for this bedroom up there, trimming it out in wood and doing a metal roof, also looking at wood windows. I told Amanda, you know, when I come to you guys, a lot of times I like Marvin windows. Their lead times right now are crazy. We're looking at Colby windows. I'm trying to get a cut of one of those so you guys can look around just for the future. A lot of my past historic work, that was our go-to window, was Colby. So I was telling on Marvin, it's about 6 months right now. I know, it's 18 to 24 months.
Wow.
So Colby's getting a little bit better. I've had really, really great luck with them in my historic work in the past. So right now I'm telling you it's a wood window, and by the time I come back, maybe I'll be able to tell you what the manufacturer is. So that's where we are.
Amanda, do you have any
Sure.
comments?
So the Historic District Design Guidelines would recommend that dormers be placed on rear or lesser visible elevations. This would be a visible elevation. However, I'd ask for Ms. McCray to explain. I think I understand, but I want her to explain a little bit more why it can't be put on the rear. We do really want to support, you know, a means of safe egress out of this attic if at all possible. So I do believe that, you know, given the parameters of this project and, you know, the inability to really put one on the back, and then the inappropriateness of putting one on the front, this is likely the best location. It won't interfere with the stairwell on the inside. That's why it can't be on the right. So Amanda, do you mind commenting a little bit
Yes.
more why it can't be on the rear?
And thank you for reminding me of that. We do have it, so everything that you see in that massing model up there besides the dormers existing. So there is already a 2-story or 1.5-story structure to the rear. It's vaulted on the inside, so we can't place the dormer on that side because that's already got the roof line tying in. So looking to place the dormer on the left side because of that existing roof that's tying in.
Thank you.
But you can see that right there even in plan. And you know what, Amanda, I need to provide a roof plan for the final submittal.
Yeah, and maybe a photograph of the rear.
Yeah, it's hard.
Yeah,
I can't, yes.
It's really rough to get that
Yeah,
angle.
the trees are a little big. I've tried.
Thank you.
Okay.
It will change the character of the house. I see what you're saying and the necessity of this, but it'll change it. That's all there's to it.
It will change it. In fact, that was a rental house built by the folks that owned the brick house at the time. And I'm not sure that pyramid roof was ever meant to have a dormer like that. If you're looking for egress, you can put in one of the windows that lie on the roof that's flat, so egress can happen in the case of an emergency, rather than a dormer. And in the same time, you keep the style and the character of the original intent of the house.
And I know we've talked about this before, you know, I definitely am, I enjoy preservation, I enjoy working in downtown Franklin. I'm very passionate about it, but I also enjoy watching my clients continue the story and continuing, you know, as people change and families change and doing that well. And so that was where we looked at adding the dormer to it, because it is a common thing that happens with some of these smaller houses in order to have it continue its family.
Mr. Laster, just to make sure I understand, were you suggesting like a kind of a skylight?
An
Well,
honorable
in
skylight.
fact, the Winstead Greenhouse on 4th Avenue South.
Right.
That's what they have, and that's what they use for their egress window.
Right, and I remember us talking about that. It is harder to get the egress dimensions on some of those things, but I do think it's worthwhile specifically for this roof style, which is so characteristic of this house, and the visibility. We do want to try to accommodate egress, of course, and I think that, you know, if there's a way to do what you're suggesting there, it would be the most ideal in light of the guidelines.
Yeah, I've seen those recently, just looking around on the internet, but I also would really want to understand better. I still can't really understand why it couldn't be on the rear.
The roof line to the second, it's already ties in high.
The other roof ties into it.
There's addition on the back. or-
Could one of
or
the-
extension.
There's no way to rework that.
There's none, no.
Could the type of,
There it is.
Yeah, and that is even
It's just
deceiving.
right
It
here.
ties right
Yeah.
in to the
Way
bottom.
up on it.
could the type of window that Mr. Lasser was referring to go above that addition on the back?
No, it really,
too
it's,
high.
that's still,
It's
yeah,
so
it's a little
really
bit
tall.
deceiving.
It's hard to tell, yeah.
Yeah, it's only about a foot or a couple feet at the most below, and our ceiling doesn't even go that high. And also from an egress standpoint, there's also guidelines of how high off the floor you have to have your egress. In this particular room, I mean, I know we're making
It's a
decisions
wall.
here that are permanent and you shouldn't design for the moment, but that is a kid's bedroom. So, you know, I'm also trying to realize I want somebody to be able to crank that window out and be able to get out. So that's where we looked at we've looked at some of the skylights. We've actually done them in some of our newer construction. I don't know. I'm not as crazy about it on the.
Does this help?
Yes, that helps a little bit. It ties in there.
Doesn't the dormer still create, I mean, it still creates a unhistoric look. I'll have to look.
You're talking about the skylight.
Yeah, the skylight.
Yeah, and that to me, the skylight it still doesn't look historic, and I like the look of the dormer better, but that's a.
The dormer almost looks like a better eye catcher.
Your dormer looks
Michael's
well
the contractor on
proportioned
this.
on that side of the house. You know, when I look at it, it looks like maybe historic. But when you see it from the front, you think, that just kind of something looks off about that.
Is it just the one?
Well, one thing.
It is just the.
It has an
Front
inappropriate
elevation
roof. The
drawing,
roof's
any
inappropriate. It has a
Mm-hmm.
classic brick roof. Should have a 5 feet or more appropriate standing seam roof. So
Okay.
You know, the roof was put on 20 years ago, and it's the wrong roof.
He doesn't like the roof. Can you pick that up?
Ideally, those egress windows that we're talking about are not, they're not ideal, but I think
No.
it would read better than a dormer on the side.
And you think visually it's a better look from the outside?
It won't take your eye,
Well,
would be
I will,
quite as much.
Mr. Lee, I'll just say it's more compatible with the intent of the guidelines because it's not altering the historic roof shape as visible from the street view.
I think it's something they can just look at. You're getting the feedback, and
Yes, yes.
and then you can decide what you want to bring forth.
Right.
So
I will say one thing, because I don't disagree on the fact that from the front, it looks rather large. And Amanda and I, Amanda Rosen and I had this discussion. So part of that is because we are staying 2 feet off from the front, from that wall. If you are at 18 inches off from the side wall, it actually gets smaller in scale because it gets lower on that triangle. And so it doesn't feel so high up. And maybe that's just because this is a smaller structure, that's something proportionally. I did look at that when I was laying it out, and that is something I like better, but I know the guidelines prefer 2 feet.
It's 1 foot.
Is it 1 foot? Oh, well, never mind then. I'll fix that for next time.
Maybe you can give us another.
I think for
Yes,
accessory-
absolutely.
So it doesn't look so much of a weighted mass, and because the building has such a symmetry to it already, I think it's looking very heavy on that left side with just the one. Is there an opportunity to balance it
Yeah,
with
I
a
mean,
pair? I mean, if you've got 1 foot now,
yep,
it
absolutely.
could be a different,
And I'm
entirely
not
different
opposed to a
look.
dormer on both sides. It gives more natural light into that space.
You'd actually be very open to doing both sides of that cemetery wood.
2 for garages, 2 for garages. Okay, but 1 foot for the main.
I think
Brian, the window that you're
Okay.
proposing,
That
is that a
helps.
Velux type window? Does that not sit on a curb?
The
Raised
first,
curb?
the first I've ever seen was the one at the Winstead Greenhouse, so I really don't know.
I mean, that's a good question too, because the one we've done does sit on a curb that opens out for egress.
Okay, anything else? All right, Amanda, you got anything else?
I'm good.
All right,
Thanks,
thank
guys.
you all.
Thank you, Amanda.
Okay. Now we're down to the addition at 111 Winslow Road.
Okay,
It's
I will,
time. It's
I will
time.
just set the stage for this one. We have Michael Casadas here, who is working on this addition. We did send you some materials that Michael provided ahead of the meeting. And I spoke with Michael earlier, and we clarified some of the calculations. So what I have on the screen here will actually be more reflective of the way that this commission typically understands and perceives the addition calculations, meaning that we've called out the area for square footage for demolition versus new construction versus historic in a more easily understandable way that you're all used to seeing. Is that fair to?
That is fair.
Okay, thank you, Michael.
My name is Michael Katsadis. I'm with MK Studio representing Reed and Cameron and Anderson for their new house. We're intending to renovate the existing house, demolish portion of the existing house that's not historic, that was built in the 1980s perhaps. We don't know exactly what date. If you can scroll down and see that back porch, one a little more further down. Yeah, that portion. We're not demoing that portion, no. We're renovating those walls and adding windows and a fireplace and a porch, but we're not demoing that wall.
So for reference, this is at the end of the driveway. If you're looking to the left, you can see this here.
Correct.
Yeah.
I do have an existing site plan. We can review that in a minute. We are removing that shed storage area completely. And of course, that garage belongs to the adjacent property now.
So for a reminder for some and some new information for our newer commissioners. This particular property was subdivided recently. So the building that you see here is existing, of course, and then the garage on the property belonged to it historically. The Historic Zoning Commission, in tandem with the city, did consider an application to take that whole parcel and divide it into 3, which separated the garage from the house. The commission supported that, and the city approved the subdivision of the lots to create 3 lots. So what we have now is, what Michael's talking about today is the existing house, which is on its own lot, which no longer has a garage. And then there'll be a lot in the middle that has a garage with no house yet. And then the 3rd lot over to this side is entirely vacant. And so we'll be seeing the proposed improvements to this property, a new house on the middle property, and then a new house and likely garage on the 3rd property.
Correct.
All right.
While Amanda's on this slide, the existing driveway as it is right now encroaches the adjacent property. So that piece of driveway as far as from the back part of the house is going to be removed. And based on the LSA calculations, we're going to add permeable pavers. But so that driveway in the back of the house will be removed to meet the building and zoning codes.
So this section and this section here?
Yep.
Okay.
And the concrete to the existing garage.
Okay, yes. Okay, any questions about the garage in relation to the house?
It just, bottom line is, we don't.
We're not talking about it today.
We don't talk about the garage.
Correct.
That's another property.
Okay.
Correct. If you can scroll down to, next page.
Okay.
So this is the existing house with a screened-in porch. So that left portion of the house, the screened porch, the flex room, those 2 areas, those 2 rooms will be demolished and renovated. And the new addition will be attached to the main house. And I'll show you that in just a minute.
So, Michael, I'm just going to kind of jump in to kind of help steer
Yeah,
the
please.
conversation. These areas are proposed to be removed. The applicants indicated that they are not historic, and you can tell that they were not constructed in a way that would be recommended by the guidelines currently, as far as the shape and configuration. So Michael has calculated this square footage and understands that once this is removed, that's no longer part of the discussion for the size of addition that can be added.
On top of that, the screened-in porch square footage, it's not added to any calculations of the house, of the existing house. So that 366 square feet, I think,
Yes.
it's not part of any calculations. So once it's removed, it's removed, and it's not benefiting us
Right. So
at all.
That's non-historic.
it's non-historic, and it's not being considered as part of the new addition square footage calculation. And nor should the flex space.
Correct,
Correct.
correct.
Okay, we had a question about that, so I just want to make sure everyone understood that when he
Everybody got that?
is calculating, he understands this is, once it's gone, it's gone. Okay.
Okay. So scroll down to a couple more pages and here's the demolition plan. And basically the solid lines are the existing and walls that will maintain or renovate. Again, you can see the portion, the screen-in porch and that bedroom will be removed.
Okay.
Okay, the second floor is to remain as is, correct?
Correct. Second floor stays as is. We're not, we're renovating it inside, we're remodeling it, but exterior-wise, we're not touching it. Okay. So this is the proposed floor plan of the main house. So we're adding a larger modern kitchen, a larger pantry. The front part of the house does not change exterior-wise. That existing bathroom in the master bath kind of gets relayed out. And the flex room and the screen porch now becomes the master bedroom wing with a larger walk-in closet, a mudroom, laundry room. And we've added a rear porch, the fireplace, and an attached or a breezeway that connects to the detached carriage house. This detached carriage house will be phased in. Originally, part of the main construction, the first part of the construction will be to build the carriage house
Oh.
itself,
Okay.
okay? And then, should I disclose? Is that okay? So Reed and Cameron will be occupying the apartment above this carriage house while the main house is being renovated.
Okay, so Michael, let's talk about the house
Yes.
specifically. Is this the line where the addition starts?
Yes,
Okay, so everyone understands this is all existing here,
correct.
and this is where the addition starts to kind of tie into the house. And I think it'll be more clear once you see the elevations. So I'm going to go ahead and skip to that. So this is the right side. Michael, do you want to talk about this and
So-
what's changed and what hasn't on this side?
Right. I should have brought a pointer. So the main, everything else in the front kind of stays the same. We're not touching it. There is an existing door, pedestrian door going into the house. We are removing that and we're adding a window. So these two windows will, in fact, be part of the keeping room. And I'm adding a kind of roll-lock or a brick wainscot area around the house that establishes kind of the porch elevation as well. And then that same line of that brick wainscot comes through to the carriage house with a couple wing walls on either side of that breezeway. So those columns will have that symmetrical alignment look. The roof above the porch is at a 1.5, 12. It's going to be a metal roof. I'm offsetting the chimney of the fireplace so it won't be as massive. So you can see if you go to the next page. Well, that's on the left side.
Okay, so this switch them up.
Yeah, so that's the facade from the rear, cutting through that breezeway, looking at the back of the house. So we're looking at this door going into the kitchen and keeping area, this door going into the mudroom, master bedroom, and then keeping room.
And this is
And
the
that's
breezeway. Okay.
Correct. With the wing walls right there, or knee walls.
Okay, now I'm going to go back to the left elevation. So this is where you can really tell the extent of the existing house versus the addition. You want to talk about that, Michael?
So yeah, the existing house has that stone, and then we'll transition with that offset with a vertical kind of lap siding.
Okay. Do you have anything else you want to talk about?
So let's go to that one more page.
Sure.
Scroll it down a little. Zoom out, I'm sorry.
Oh, I see. Okay.
So that's the back elevation of the carriage house. Amanda and I were talking earlier this morning, and then to maintain that 1 foot offset between the dormer and the lower part, I've enlarged the garage so that dormer will be offset 1 foot from the main. So we'll scroll down just a little bit, zoom in. And that's the facade as you're driving up the driveway and looking at the carriage house. So you see the breezeway connector, and basically that height is determined by the porch at the main house.
Thank you, Michael. may I share some
Yeah,
comments?
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to start with the house. So I did talk to Michael a little bit today, and I do appreciate some of the updated calculations, and then also the information on how he's made some changes to the facade based on those comments. I have not, since Michael submitted this, based on my comments this morning, I have not checked the calculations. Michael, can you confirm?
Let's go back to, not that page.
Michael, would you mind speaking into the mic?
I'm so sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, that sheet right there, and zoom in. Here are all the calculations that kind of determine everything.
Okay, so it appears that the addition, and the addition being based on, you know.
So the addition, I'm sorry, Amanda, I'm going to jump in there. See those item number 3, 4, 5, and 6? So 3, 4, 5, and 6 are the additions. So the first floor addition is 670 square feet. The rear porch addition is 298 square feet. And the breezeway, originally I had not calculated the breezeway as part of the main house. So now I've added the breezeway to the main house. So that's another 105 square feet for a total of 1,073 square feet. And that's almost at a little bit below 50% of the existing first floor square footage.
Okay, so that size, and based on his breakdown, and you know, he's included the second floor, which is 0, so that cancels out. We don't include the second floor anyway. Would meet the intent of the guidelines. We'll talk about the carriage house here in a second, but I just wanted to clarify for everyone's understanding that the addition does meet the size intent.
The original submittal, I had to decrease the master bedroom and the porch to meet those square footage. I was over 50% as of this morning.
Okay, so I want to focus on the elevations.
Wait a minute, let's make sure we understand that.
Sure.
The existing house right now is how big, square footage wise? I didn't write that down on his detail there. It's 2,500 and something, I think.
Well, the existing first floor is 2,100 square feet, 2,171. The existing with,
Counting the portions he's proposing to remove.
correct,
Okay, I'm looking at 2457, right?
2457, that's first and second.
He has the second floor included. We don't consider that as part of the calculation. So what he's suggesting here is this 1,929 is the size of the house once that addition's removed, that they're proposing to remove on the
Okay,
back.
and that's what we're keying on.
And that's what the.
1929 is what we're
1929.
keying on, okay.
That is
And then
correct.
the addition that you're adding, all of the addition is how much?
So the first floor is 670. The rear is
Okay, so it's
298.
1,073 total
It's
new addition, right?
1,073.
That is correct.
So that, to me, would exceed the 50%.
It's a little over, right? 50% is 964.5.
I'm sorry, what?
50% of what is going to be remaining, I've got is 964.5.
Yeah,
Yeah, so the addition areas, anything under roof being added to 1929 should be half of that number or less.
that's right. Okay.
So it is a little bigger.
It's a little bigger right now, okay.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I was using the 2171 of the original, yeah, yeah.
Mr. Chair, how much?
I don't know that we have that information right now. Michael will get that if that's something that he and his
Yeah, I
clients
mean, I
choose to
think
bring forward.
we know exactly what we're talking about here.
Yeah.
That's-
I mean,
that's why
we
I'm
can do that
trying to
math
get
real
into
quick.
this. So,
It would be over by a couple of
it's
percent.
not much.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so I want to move on, because for the sake of time,
Yep.
and the rest of the agenda, I want to move on to the elevations, please. So I want to start with the left elevation. So this is the left side of the house. The guidelines would recommend that additions appear to be subservient to the house and smaller in square footage. We are working on the square footage and making sure that that's accurate. Because of the location of the addition, this does appear to be a lot more than a house, but that is really because it's on the, it's on the back corner and then the rest of the house originally is concentrated here. So what I would suggest here is perhaps, I'm not sure what the inspiration is behind the vertical board. I would suggest the vertical board. I would suggest a horizontal board unless it's tying into some element that's already on the house.
It was the existing part of that T111 that they used in the back of the house, so that's why I kept it.
And the reason I would suggest that is because it helps lessen the perceived height of the addition in relation to the rest of the house. This is a 1.5 story, but it's very slightly 1.5. If you were to look at the house from the front, it doesn't read but as maybe a 1 story, and then it has the dormers on the side.
I do have the existing front elevation.
Yeah, we can go to the photograph here. So you can see it reads as a 1 story from the front. So that anything that we can do to try to scale down or lessen the size perception of any addition would be recommended here. So I do think a lap would be appropriate as opposed to a vertical board. And I understand, why the applicant did that. They're working with what's already here, but they are proposing to change this anyway. So I think it would be, as Ms. Pierce would say, an opportunity to
I love that
adjust it.
opportunity. I'd rather change it to a horizontal siding.
Thanks, Michael. I'm glad you agree. Okay, so moving on. I want to talk about this side. This is an existing dormer. So the existing dormer is not proposed to change in any way. We may want to look at the siding, if that's something that you can do.
Absolutely.
I don't want to ask you to change anything that's not within the client's purview, but if you were trying to side it to match this, I can understand.
I wouldn't side it. I would create a
Panel.
larger corner board
Right.
rather than having small strips of siding across.
I agree, and that would be less of a maintenance issue too. So my concerns primarily, and I did express this to Michael earlier, are this foundation height and how that ties into the house. So historically, you have a stone house that, you don't have a water table appearance, but with the addition, I can understand that a brick would be an appropriate, foundation material for an addition. However, it's very tall. And I did ask, about that, and he explained why it's proposed to be that tall. It's to tie into the finished floor elevation. If there's a way to artificially lower that so that it doesn't appear to be as tall because it is not consistent with what you would see historically or on the surrounding buildings. And then further, he's proposed to extend it here to match, and I understand that. But this would be really an artificial foundation because this is a slab building, and so it would be recommended that this almost disappear altogether. Now there is if I'm going to the elevation set that shows the garage, to tie in with the breezeway, they're proposing knee walls that do that, and I know a lot of this is based on those knee walls, and so it may cause some adjustments, but it would be much more historically appropriate and sensitive if this foundation level was lowered, at least to where you don't, for the garage, because it's not needed. And then for the house, if there was a way to even, lower lap siding down, even lower than the finished floor. We've done that for some buildings in the past to try to mitigate that, to get that lower. So that would be my main suggestion here on the house. Now moving on to the garage. As I'd mentioned scale previously, this really is a perceived one-story house with a dormer on the side. I do have some worries about the, let me find it.
Right there.
Okay, it's
on
all
that
in here.
sheet.
These are very large sheets.
Yeah.
I do have some worry about the scale of the garage. And I'm going to go to this one, elevation to really help. This is going to appear to be of a higher scale than the house, even if it is lower. So my suggestions would be to use lap again to really scale down these dormers significantly. And then also, this is a little more difficult for me to understand right now, why this breezeway has to tie in so much higher than the door. But I'll let Mr. Casadas explain that. But I do think that this needs to be finessed so that the scale feels much more appropriate to the house. thank you for allowing me to share those comments.
May I reply? So the breezeway, the height, yeah, it looks massive from this cutaway. I'm so sorry. That breezeway does seem, and it is out of scale perhaps on this section, but that breezeway is established by the porch behind us, by the rear porch of the house. So the only way to remedy that is stepping down the porch, and that's going to create taller columns. Or stepping down perhaps the breezeway itself, kind of
How
having
tall
a
is that?
zigzag.
How far tall is that breezeway?
It is not from the porch,
Grade, from grade.
from the porch, or from grade,
Okay. All right, yeah.
from the porch to the bottom of that porch rack or the beam, it's 9 feet,
And so how tall is this foundation?
less than 30 inches.
Okay. So could this be broken into two forms? You have the porch and then it breaks and the breezeway sits lower than this
We
eave?
we could connect it separately and bring the breezeway down a couple of feet.
But again, this isn't not, I mean, the breezeway is not visible
No.
from the street or from the
No,
front.
ma'am.
It is?
It's not, and I thought about that, but it is part of a very charming, diminutive kind of neighborhood. So I would be a fan of that.
Moving down the breezeway.
Yes, I think that form just feels artificial for that neighborhood. And
We can do that, and I could probably eliminate the wing walls totally, and just come down with the steps from the porch to the breezeway.
So that would cause this, let me get back to it, this to sit lower.
Correct.
Okay. I do
Correct.
think that would be much more consistent
look
with
better.
historic equivalents.
And I think it would help too with the overall massing of it.
I do too.
And somehow the vertical board really does make it look
Taller?
church-like. But it'll also help the breezeway function better as a breezeway, because once you have so much height, if you get a rain and you're running across your breezeway to bring your groceries in,
No, absolutely.
you tend to stay a little more dry if you've got the overhead a little closer to you, so.
Yeah, go up one.
Yeah, the massing on that
Up
is
it a little bit.
a bit grandiose.
Yeah, my concern is that, again, that breezeway, you see how it's kind of cut away, how it connects to the porch. But
While you have that slide, are both those shed dormers, are they currently existing?
existing, yes, sir.
Is the grade falling from front to rear on the lot, I'm assuming?
Rear to
So
front.
opposite, rear to front.
Rear to front, okay.
So I can pull that, I'm sorry, I think it's a different page. I'll pull up that elevation of the side, and I think that'll help show a little bit. Ken, I think
Okay.
that's a good point. So you see, this is the front of the property, and it falls back.
Okay. In the
And-
directions I thought, yeah.
Oh, yeah,
Well,
on that side.
on that side. On this side, it goes rear to front.
I showed you the wrong side.
Huh.
It's a unique property, certainly, as far as topo goes.
I agree with Amanda about the scale of the dormers on the carriage house. Give it too much of a massive feel. There may be a way to rework that a little bit.
Yeah, I was trying to kind of replicate the existing dormers that are facing the sides.
Yeah. And then the windows that you were going to, you said something about removing some windows. Did you, or did I misunderstand?
On the left,
On the-
yes, the left
on the-
elevation.
A door.
Yeah,
Remove the
removing the door. There's an existing door right there
There's an existing door.
where
that
that window is right there. Well, not that exact same location, but it's on that same facade.
So Lisa, to help clarify, and I do think that when the applicant resubmits this, maybe we could have the elevations provided a little differently, where you have the proposed adjacent to the existing, so you can see them side by side. This area currently is an enclosed porch.
No, no,
Oh, that's further back here?
yes.
Okay, so.
I have the existing elevations is like the third sheet.
Yeah, I think that if you
Yeah.
could, when you resubmit, if you could put the proposed and existing on the same page, that way they can see them side by side. I think that would help everyone feel like they, are understanding the changes more. That's just a small suggestion.
And then my only other question is whether or not that new chimney will be visible from the front or from,
It will not.
no?
It's underneath the main ridge.
Oh, okay.
Mr. Chair, the thing I would like to just understand better, and I think it just may be me looking, are we covering up a bunch of stone on the bedroom side? Or is
No,
that
ma'am,
just the
that's-
computer?
That stone will be exposed. We took, Cameron wanted to use that, and if you go to the
It would
floor
be on the
plan,
inside?
in the inside, in the mudroom, so when they walk in, we'll keep that.
Can we look
stone.
at that elevation again?
It's not an elevation, it's just a floor
I
plan.
mean, that side,
Oh.
the drawing of that side of the
Sure.
house.
And Michael, I noticed we're missing a photograph of this left side, if we could have that next
There-
time.
there, It's right there to your right.
Right
Upper
here?
right, yeah. You see that?
So that's the side of the house?
Yeah.
With
that's
the wing
left
wall?
side, Yep.
Okay. I saw the wing wall and just immediately thought garage, sorry.
No,
Okay,
that's
that's the
left
side of, okay.
Mary,
and
that's the side you're talking about. And
Okay.
that'll remain in place. All of this remains in place.
From the outside.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, and then behind, can I see the drawing of that side of the house?
Sure. Right here.
It must be the way the computer's showing, the drawing is showing it, because you're not really covering up half of the stone on that side, or you
No,
are?
ma'am, we're not. No,
Right.
We're going to the outside corner of that stone.
Gotcha.
Now, there is some stone that, if you remember, if you can go to the floor plan,
Yeah.
first floor, yeah. That mudroom entrance right there to, as you walk in from the rear porch, it will be to your
Yeah,
left.
that's, okay.
That
Yeah,
stone will
gotcha.
remain and it'll become part of the
Gotcha.
architectural feature of that wall.
Okay.
No, that,
Another
the
question
back of the range.
for just other commissioners' feedback, but on the rear of the garage, it looks like, to me, there's more opportunity for window than is there.
My question on that, how close are you to the, I don't know what adjoins you in the back?
It's a fence and a tree line.
Okay.
And then
That's
there's
fine.
nothing for a pretty
No,
long.
there's no neighbors back there that
No,
would.
sir.
Right.
No, sir.
So if you made the dormers on the front somewhat smaller, you might be able to pick up a lot of light, is my suggestion, on the back dormer.
Unfortunately, there's, the major habitable spaces are in the
Gotcha.
front.
Oh,
and-
gotcha.
And this is to the left is the
Okay.
master bath, and to
Gotcha.
the right is the kitchen.
Gotcha.
So by adding any windows,
I
actually,
got it.
it's not gonna add any.
So Michael, that reminds me, I know when we spoke about this project over the last couple times, I had mentioned that this would likely need to meet the accessory dwellings requirements in zoning ordinance, and you feel like confident it does? Okay, great.
As far as size, you mean?
Size and scale, yes.
Yes.
I'm just going to take one more whack at that because I can't help myself. If there were a way to rework the floor plan, the windows on that back would be spectacular for the view.
I can add a window in the walk-in closet.
Well,
Yeah, I mean, if you,
have to let the owners and the architect work that out.
yeah, they'll work that out.
Okay, so I would appreciate if there could be some comments on the foundation height, because I know that Michael needs some direction on that, if there's any.
Yes, and I would kind of, if you've got a way to do some 3D perspectives on the drawings too, that would be very helpful when
That's
we
our-
come to the voting meeting.
That's our next step, is
Yeah,
to do
yeah,
some
yeah.
3D. It's just this was just a quick,
Some of us, namely me, can't operate exactly in the flat.
no problem. That would be our next step as well.
And,
Thank you.
and I think, Mr. Chair, all of Amanda's comments were spot on.
Yes, I've written them down, and I think they are, every one of them. No,
So
I think that's good.
I agree, the foundation, the base is heavier than it needs to be.
yeah.
And it's currently at 30 inches, you said?
Yes.
I don't really see any reason why the garage foundation height should match that of the house.
It was determined, again, by the columns in the base and where those columns rest. So that's what dictated the perimeter of that water table brick line.
But with the
But-
roof of the breezeway being lowered, Michael's saying that he.
Yeah,
he
we're
feels
going to
comfortable.
eliminate those wing walls, so there's no need to maintain that line.
Amanda, how does the accessory building fit into all of this with, as far as our lot size, square footage, and all that?
So
I forget.
I would like Mr. Casadas to do some recalculations. I'm not saying that 50%, anything over 50% wouldn't be supported necessarily. Staff can only support 50% or higher. So I wouldn't, we would just like to know the number.
Sure,
Okay.
it's on there.
Okay.
It's on the first floor page, the proposed
Okay.
first floor page,
Okay.
and that is,
No, I mean for the addition on the house.
the total addition
Yeah,
of the carriage garage and the second floor of the garage.
No, I'll just, I don't want to get into too into the weeds. What Mr. Roberts is asking is, does this meet lot coverage requirements and things of that nature?
Yes.
I don't know if the addition meets the 50%. It looks like it's a little higher than that. And I'm saying, we
The
don't know
house
that
addition-
number.
The house addition?
The house addition.
It's slightly over by
Slight-
less than 100 square feet.
Right.
I
So
just figured it out.
But it appears that if those calculations are correct, then it does meet the 35% maximum building coverage, just as so. And then it would meet the 40% landscape surface area requirements of the zoning ordinance if they used permeable pavers. If it's regular hardscape, it would not.
Okay, all right. But how does the accessory building fit into the square footage situation?
That lot coverage is
Just-
33.77%.
Okay,
So the square footage, it's a sizable accessory structure.
I know.
Yes. So, but it is smaller than the house by a good degree, footprint-wise. So staff is not concerned about the size of the footprint of the accessory structure so much as the perceived scale of it. So it would be supported with some scale and material changes that would help tone down that scale.
okay, but it doesn't affect the square footage that we've already talked about with the
No.
house itself. That's what
Right.
I'm trying to get to.
Right. The
I'm not doing too
breezeway
good.
is calculated, but Mr.
Okay.
Casadas, with my
All right.
recommendation, put it with the addition of the house.
Okay. So anybody got anything else? We need to move on.
So what I would recap is that, the recommendation is that the breezeway roof line be broken and sit lower than that of the porch. And that's going to really help pull down that scale of the garage and really help address some of the massing as well. Use horizontal siding throughout. Scale down the dormers to help with that scale relationship between the house and the garage. If possible, additional windows on the rear. 3D drawings would be very helpful, and then throughout lower the foundation heights of the new areas. Am I missing any comments? Okay.
Nope, I think you got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you all.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
You've done
Anderson
a great
team.
job.
Thank you, Anderson.
Okay. Next item is new construction at 113 Splendor Ridge, Mike Ford Builders. Welcome back, Mr. Gore.
Thank you. Good evening. Shall I take it away?
Take it away, unless Amanda's got something.
I don't.
All right, fire.
We are on to Lot 3. We saw Lot 4 last week in a voting meeting. Yeah, as usual, we have a diagram here of which lot we're talking about. We're nearing the end of the west end of the road. Some of the usual diagrams. This is a pretty typical site plan for what we've seen on the rest of the street. As Amanda has been noting, as we move down the street, the finished floor elevations are getting closer and closer to the curb elevation, which is a big thumbs up from me. The lot coverage is, as all of the previous ones have been, over 35%, but under 40. As far as architectural style, we are in the Victorian family, but with I don't know whether you guys call this a story, I call it a story and a half. You guys call this a two-story? I don't know, the nomenclature gets lost on me sometimes, but it's not a big box, so I call it a story and a half.
It's supported by your development plan approval.
Okay, right. We're up to 2.5 stories, I think, with the preliminary approval. But just in terms of the character of the streetscape, we've been trying to vary the eave heights as we move down the street. So this is one of those that has a lower eave height, however many stories you want to call it. All lap siding, well, excuse me, not all lap siding, but masonry foundation, probably stone, depending on how my costs work out, for the foundation, and then a combination of lap siding and board and batten vertical kind of siding in some of the gables. We'll have a partially covered front porch. Part of it's a terrace. A bay window on the front there, and then the semi-detached garage in the rear.
I love the streetscapes.
I know.
They're always helpful.
Oh, I didn't say so, but I've got some printed versions of this if anybody wants to take a look and flip through as we're going through any of it. But
So what was provided to you guys was a little more schematic in the DRC submittal. So I did get this from Chad today, and I thought it would be ideal for you guys to see. So if you would like to see a hard copy, he's happy to share those.
I'll take one.
sure. And interestingly, what I provided you, or what I provided to Amanda to begin with, as most of the front. Anybody?
Yes.
We can
Second, share one. You want me to share one?
Yeah, share is fine.
Mr. Scout?
I'm fine. I can see.
Just as a point of interest, I had conceived of this as being more stone. We priced it all out, and it was about $70,000 worth of, well, $70,000 an upgrade in stone from if it had been even brick. So that became cost prohibitive. But I think even as lovely as it might have been with a lot of stone, I think we still have a lovely design with less stone. I'm not sure if I have any other particulars to point out, but I'm happy to answer any question for you.
What's the railing?
It is that, we've used FIPON before. It's it'll look like a turned spindle, but it's a no-rot kind of composite. When it's painted up, looks just like wood. I say FIPON.
You said on something else, I think.
We have,
we
yeah,
talked
yeah.
about before.
And I say FIPON, there's 2 or 3 different manufacturers that are really the same thing.
I had perceived it as a wrought iron kind of thing, but it's a turned spindle.
That's right. Mhm.
What is the material of the bracketing in the gables? Is that FIPON as well?
I imagine we'll try to build that out of wood.
Okay. That was going to be my suggestion. FIPON is a really good composite wood material, but I do think this is more delicate.
Would you see that? No, I see that as having a thickness to it, almost like a timber. But I could also see it being really just the thickness of the rake fascia there. Do you guys have a preference to that? I think in the Victorian design, you might see it both either way.
Right. I would defer to the commissioners. Ms. Pierce, Kathy, Ryan,
The which one?
Show me where again?
up here.
Oh.
This bracketing detail,
Yeah.
I'd ask about the material because I was envisioning it being more delicate and thin. And then, Chad was thinking more of the heavier end, and I think you could argue either one.
I don't think on a Victorian house, those are generally real heavy.
Right.
And what can't take my eyes off of looking at for a change would be this bay window. There's such an opportunity. I mean, if it's being inspired by Victorian, to do some kind of a taller window, I think, with a base that's, they even use diagonal wood
As part of an infill.
trim on that. I think
between-
that could just be reworked to reflect the house more.
I think you're talking about lowering the foundation height
Right.
there.
Lowering it and the material.
Sure.
So lowering here, bringing the paneling down and having taller windows.
And having wood.
Right.
I like that.
Okay, does anyone want to continue talking about the front elevation, or would you like to move on?
The other thing I would say about the front elevation, and I would have to ask someone else what it would be, but I think the front porch detailing looks more colonial revival than this particular house. What would you do, Ken or someone,
That's an interesting
for the detailing?
point.
I mean, I hate to suggest design, but a Victorian would probably be more of a balustrade kind of finish on it, or,
You're talking about above the porch cornice?
Yeah.
right, instead of the
Pediment,
gabled
yeah.
element that's there.
I think you would see exactly this a lot of the time. And maybe
Would
there
you-
would be some sort of a sunburst pattern or something in the panel that's in the portico, or in the, what would you call it, just the gable there?
Okay, just, and I'll look at some pictures too, and you may be right, but
Yeah.
those are the two comments that come up for me.
And your columns are double, aren't they? Don't they have a
Yes.
double column?
That's right.
You
Well,
have an
there's
arch,
three, yeah.
Kind of an arch thing
Mhm.
between them that kind of mirrors your gable decoration.
Yes, yeah. And I think that's pretty Victorian typical.
Right.
This is really kind of an Andrew Jackson Downing kind
That's
of
what I
cottage
think,
look, isn't
yeah.
it? More than just
Gothic.
Victorian.
Yeah.
Yeah, Gothic.
Yeah,
revival.
it's got some
Gothic
vernacular
revival.
kind of, yeah.
What are the finials made out of?
We'll probably have to make those out of wood as well. We might be able to cap just the very top, the very decorative cap part of it. I might be able to find a composite piece to fit up there, but most of it would be out of wood.
I don't know why, but that middle section peak, that whole it just looks odd to me. I don't have any suggestion, but it just, when I see it there, and when I see it on the street view, it just seems to conflict with what I see next door. And I have no suggestion, but it just jumps out at me, and I don't normally have anything to say about these houses, but
So it kind of goes back, I think, I understand what you're saying, and I think it kind of goes back to, using vertical versus horizontal lap board and what draws your eye and what doesn't.
well, that's the thing that draws that's what I see. When I see that house, that I'm just immediately drawn to that middle peak.
Right, and I think on Queen Anne style homes, that's the intent. You would never use a lap, a horizontal lap in a gable like this, as far as I'm aware. But it is a very, it's of a scale or a mass that's significant up to what's here. So I do think that, to Chad's question, hey, would you call this a 1.5 or a 2? I even looked at Kelly, I'm like, would you call that a 1.5 or a 2? Because it does have it does take up, I would call it a 1.5 reluctantly, but it's because your eye's going all the way up to the top.
If
Yes.
it's worth a little bit of, I don't know, context, there's a couple of other elevations of similar proportion down the street. Now, I don't think you can see any of them in my context, but it may even be the same. Okay, look at Lot 6 down there. Just as a matter of, this may not be worth anything because it almost doesn't matter, but it's the same height and similar roof pitch as what's been done there.
It may just be the finish on this one.
Yeah, maybe so.
It really
I don't-
is just drawing your eye
But
up.
it just seems like a big mass sitting there.
Well,
To me, and I may be the only one.
Okay.
What would fish scales do? It may be too much, but fish
I like the idea of I'm excited about the vertical siding because there is enough of a Carpenter Gothic kind of flavor in there. But maybe that needs to be supported with some of the window trim, better with some of the window trim that you might have seen in a Carpenter Gothic version of a Victorian.
And what might help, this is just the paint scheme.
It could be.
Yeah, well, I think that that those two, the lap siding and the vertical siding should be the same color. Would you guys agree with that?
If the intent is to tone down the perceived height, then absolutely.
Yeah.
I would agree.
Yeah, I think we're really just talking about a textural change there.
Okay.
Right. And it reads really, like you said, Jim, it reads really strongly online. I don't think this will read as strongly.
Because I think what's been shown, the way this has all gone, I think has been excellent. So it's, I'm not going to pick at
Well,
it.
thank you.
I agree with Ms. Pierce about the bay window.
I do too. I like that idea.
Yeah.
I was just gonna say, normally when I think of story and a half, the second story is under the roof line, which this is.
Right.
But it consumes the attic, what would have been the attic. And this has such a soaring height to it, that it appears there's room for an attic above.
I wish there were, but I don't think there is. Yeah.
Well, that helps me feel a little better about my trying to figure it out. Thank you.
Okay, anybody got anything else?
Let's look
Amanda?
at the other elevations.
All right.
Okay, so here's the right side.
I like that you picked up some of the treatment in the gable, but not as, it's kind of
Yeah.
reduced.
Right. So staff has no comments about this side, and here is the rear.
I'll tell you, and this occurred to me while I was sitting here, that I don't think this is just an aside, I think you'll like it better, that I don't think my elevations accurately reflect the way the grading is going to work around there. I think, well, maybe they do. I think that the brick on the foundation of the garage, I think I can lower that significantly and maybe even hide it completely, because with all these other lots, that's been the highest point of the lot. And so we've had to sort of build up the foundation to make sure that I was protecting the finished floor, the garage floor. But here, the grade is going to be below the garage floor. So I think I can actually nearly eliminate the brick
That's great.
there.
That's great. Okay, so I'm going to move on to the next elevation set. Here's the rear, and then here's the left side. And I don't have any comments.
Anybody got any comments on the left, right, or rear elevations then?
I saw a window in the chimney. Oh, no, I'm seeing something.
Oh, no, it's beyond. Yeah, there's a door going into the garage and beyond.
Yeah, no.
It's a difficult trick to pull off.
Well,
I have seen that before, though.
We've had people request it too.
Window in the chimney?
I have seen a window in a
We've
chimney.
got one in Franklin.
We sure do. Right on the corner of MacArthur and
Not
Murfreesboro Road.
historic.
All right,
Thank you.
that's it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Staff will recommend denial for the
Yeah.
lot coverage.
Following the form.
Thank you as always.
Thanks, Chad.
Thank you, Chad.
Okay. Next item is new construction at 122 Hollingsdale Court.
Hi, Matt.
Hello, how are you, Amanda Rose?
See you in person.
That's right, this is the first time, isn't
I
it?
have talked to Matt for months and months and months, but have not met him in person, so nice to meet you.
Well, welcome.
Thanks, thank you. It's nice to see real people instead of everybody on video screens. Hope we don't have to return to that.
Amanda, do you have any opening comments on this?
I will just say this is one of the more difficult lots to address in Harlan-Stell. It has a double frontage and it's right on a corner, so I want to thank Matt first and foremost, for working really closely with staff to try to come up with this massing study for you today, taking into account comments about where the garage should be placed and adjusting to the setbacks, which are a little bit more difficult to do on this corner here. So I'll let him present, but I do want to thank you for all your work.
Thank you. I really want to get it right. I really love the neighborhood, and when I saw that house on the corner years ago, I said, wow, I'd love to design a house in there. And this is the last lot, and so I really do want to get it right. And the owners are great people.
And keep in mind, it's the last lot because it is difficult. So Matt has worked really hard to try to get something to you today that we can all feel good about.
After doing some plan development and assuming that the garage would be, as you look at the schematic site plan here, on the left side, which, would be the natural thing for me to think of, the non-approach side, because as you can see, you approach the property that direction down the road. When I tried to develop a plan around that concept and present it to the owners, it became clear that it was really, it was taking up, that driveway and garage was taking up so much of the prime real estate, the area that really needs to be the interior space, that I wanted to back up and really reconsider. And so the concept that I came up with is, I'm sorry it's not better labeled here, but the form that's to the right there, I'm proposing that be the location for the garage, rear-facing garage, and it complies with setbacks and offset requirements. And there's a great opportunity for landscape buffering, as is indicated in this site plan. And if we go to, I guess if you skip ahead a few pages, I think it would be page 6, so you can see the photograph of the approach. Can you go a couple, oh yeah, we'll talk about this.
Okay.
This is an aerial of the massing study. And again, this is a massing study. I really haven't developed elevations or floor plans specifically around this, although it's suggestive of the character appropriate to the neighborhood and to the region. You can see the location of the garage facing to the rear of the property, a subservient mass to the main body of the house, and complementary to it, and my concept being one of where the home might appear as if it's been added to over the years. And if we go, here's some site photos. The
I think this would be really helpful.
approach photo, there we are on the approach. And so you see where the construction fencing is. That's the site. So as you go to the next photo, then you see where at this point, perhaps the driveway would fork off from the main road, and then you would approach the garage. And this is a view looking back towards that direction. So
this would be more in front of the house.
Correct. And then if you, then we'll just walk through. I did some views just on various points around the house. So
I don't know where you want me to start.
let's go to, if you go forward one more page, I think that would be good.
Sure.
Okay, so the two top images, it's really the same image. One is without trees and one is with trees. This represents when you're on the road and you're approaching the house. And you get an oblique view of the garage and of the rear of the house. And opportunity for privacy fencing along this side as well as the foliage. The bottom left view is if you were standing in the behind the backyard in that what do you call that open space there? The open space, looking back towards the house, and you see the garage on the left side and it's probably going to be the master wing on the right, and just a rear side view, bottom right. If you go back one more page, you can see what the front of the house might look like. One advantage of placing the garage here is that you get the entire front of the house given over to the home itself. rather than having to share the space with the garage. So that's the concept. And just really wanted to get y'all's comments on it and agreement on this direction so that I could go ahead and develop the plan and show that to the owners. And did I cover that well enough?
I think so, Matt. Thank you very much.
Okay.
As I explained, this is a difficult lot for a number of reasons, and so Matt really wanted to work on massing before he and his clients invest a lot of time in elevations, which I think is a great approach for a project like this one.
Having said that, I did include that elevation study of the garage. Is that?
Yes.
Did
Yeah,
you get that?
And I can pull that up.
Okay.
So essentially, as Matt suggested, his first inclination was put the garage over here because as you approach down the street, the idea was not to have the garage be the first thing you see. And he really tried to make that work. I've met with him and we looked at different things, but it was taking a lot of the buildable space. And so he had asked about doing this. And so one of the things the first thing I did is talk to zoning, make sure it met all zoning requirements, and there were some adjustments made in order to ensure that it would. And secondly, my recommendation would be to really do as much as you can on this elevation so that it didn't feel like a garage, but maybe more like the side of a house. So, we're talking about, materials, fenestration patterns. So, typically garages don't have windows on them. Perhaps we need to have, the illusion of windows on the side of this so that it feels more like the side of a house instead of the side of a garage. But as far as the massing of the overall structure goes, it's very similar to what you see elsewhere in the neighborhood. Ideally, the garage would be on this side, but I do think to Matt's point, then when you view the house from the front, you really aren't experiencing any garage at all, which is, more historically appropriate in some respects as well. So staff can support this. Once we have a little bit more information about the elevation set, I think it'll be more helpful. Now, based on my comments, Matt did do a character study for the garage to kind of give you a sense of what he's thinking in terms of trying to have that read more like the side of a house. And so what you see here are some dormers. This is a section that really helps bridge the gap between the main form of the house and then the garage here, trying to really detail it out so it feels more like maybe an addition to the house instead of the side of a garage. But as far as I understand, we haven't gotten into calculations about lot coverage and things, but he understands that the maximum building coverage on the lot would be 35% as recommended by the guidelines.
Do we have an aerial view or something that shows this lot in the context of the development?
I could certainly pull up an aerial. Give me just a moment.
So in the meantime, you will be designing it later on, so this is a preliminary.
Correct. I
review.
kind of wanted to make sure that this direction would pass and be acceptable to y'all
Okay.
before I went ahead and really developed and really got into
Yeah.
the plan.
Well done,
And what were you most concerned about that might not be acceptable to the board?
Beside the garage.
I think driving down the road and the first thing, honestly, the first thing you'll see is that garage. I mean, you'll see the entire view of the house, but the garage will be in the be closest to you. And I wanted to make sure that that was fine. And
So I do have the aerial on the screen here. This is
Yeah.
the property in question. So you can see as you approach, Matt's concerns about, how to mass, and so it felt appropriate. So I hope this gives you a little bit more context. Unfortunately, I can't zoom in much more without it
Okay. that
taking the
helps.
aerial away.
Yeah. So you're going to see, to the point, you're going to see the entrance of the driveway before you see the front of the house.
Yes.
Come around the bend. Yes.
correct. And
I
I'm
understand.
really counting on, I know we don't really want to, totally rely on landscape and things like that, but that will help because there'll be a good buffer area and fencing. And again, it's being, what was I going to say? I think it'll present an attractive view. When I was speaking with Amanda Rose, I can ensure that that garage addition will, be very complimentary and, be a beautiful part of the house with just as much
I don't
care and
know.
attention as the rest.
I don't know how you have any alternatives unless you move the main facade
Yeah.
off of plane with the other houses that are adjacent, so.
Right.
Where do you plan to put the front of the house, the front entrance to the house? In the curb?
Just past the curb.
Okay. just
Somewhere in
To the
here.
left.
Yeah. Yeah, right about there. And as you can see it in the, if you pull up the massing model again, the door would be,
Right, one too far.
And it's nice that the lot has got this little triangular piece that you can put
Oh,
your
okay.
driveway approach in.
I think it does present that as a nice opportunity.
Mhm.
It really does. So
Okay, I see.
you can see how the
Yeah.
situated the front porch there, and the front door would be under there.
And so you'll get to the garage from the side, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Pulls right in.
Correct.
Yeah.
So the doors actually face the rear of the property.
Right.
And then what will be this house backyard?
And then the
Behind the
backyard
gr-
is,
Is all this open space?
Okay.
correct, so I'll just. So the driveway proposed driveway would be around here.
Right there. Mm-hmm.
The garage would be around this zone facing to the rear,
Mm-hmm.
to the open space, and the main body of the house. right there.
So that you can continue the street scene that's there.
Right. And I think you said, and as you detail it further, there may be an opportunity for a little privacy fence somewhere
Yeah.
to pull that together.
Definitely. The owners would be in favor of that, of having something
Really,
along
from
that
your-
side.
From your orientation, I don't see where your garage actually faces the street.
Mm-mm.
It faces the rear of the property.
It does.
It does.
It faces the
Right.
rear of the property, and the only way
Property.
that you see those rear doors is that
Right.
you're, on the approach, you're kind of approaching and seeing the rear part of the house. So it's a very unusual lot in that regard. You see
Right.
basically three sides of that lot. So in that, I guess that is kind of a challenge, or that's just unusual. Most lots don't have three sides open like that.
Well, I think you took kind of a quirky shape and made it work for you.
Yeah, I do too. Continue.
Well, good.
So will this mass fit in this 35% lot coverage?
That's the other.
That is something that Mr. Smith will need to determine and provide.
Okay, that would be my question, just looking at it as I do right now. Is that going to fit 35%?
So to further explain that, Mr. Smith, the Historic Zoning Commission has a guideline that recommends that anything under roof not exceed 35% of the lot, more or less. So your LSA is a little different. It's anything under roof and your hardscapes. So this fits underneath that. So as long as the house doesn't exceed the 35% coverage, building coverage, then they would meet the intent of the guidelines.
Okay. I had calculated that in earlier studies, and I had not updated that. So
Okay.
that's something that I can
Yeah.
totally do and
That'll be key. Otherwise,
communicate that.
This looks fine from what we've seen here.
Well,
And
good.
you're right, the driveway, this is you've solved the problem.
It's,
Well,
I
thanks.
think your roof pitches and the individualized massing of each of the elements is done handsomely well. It'll be interesting to see your choice of materials and fenestrations and attention to detail on it, but I think it's well done, too.
Yeah,
Well,
I agree.
thanks.
And I think your
Appreciate it.
clients have been well served to have you do this, as opposed to going full bore with a design that maybe wouldn't have worked. So kudos to you.
I've never been complimented so well in a public hearing.
But
This is being recorded,
don't-
right?
Don't get too used to that.
later. Yeah. Yes, again, I want to thank Mr. Smith. This is a difficult lot. It's one of the reasons it's the last one. I feel strongly about that, and I think he really did try to work very closely with zoning and planning to ensure that what he brought to you today would be something that meets the requirements and that you all could feel good about. So thank you for your comments.
Sure. And just one last question. As I was doing the trial elevation of the garage, it could be detailed as a carriage house, something that was always a utilitarian structure, historic, or as part of the house. And I didn't know if you had any thoughts on that. I tend towards carriage house, so it's not trying to pretend something that it's not, that
It's
it's
hard to
just.
say without seeing the entirety of your design.
And how that would affect the percentage of house to lot.
You may not want to add to your challenges.
So, so Kathy, I think what he's saying is that he was thinking leave it connected but appear as a carriage house. And my recommendation on that would be that, typically, historically, a carriage house would be detached. And so I feel more strongly about it reading as like maybe an addition over time to the house as opposed to rendering it as a carriage house. But I am excited to see what you bring forward.
Okay, great. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Thank you very much.
Thanks.
I don't know
You're
if
all
we need a
good champs.
formal motion to adjourn since we don't have, otherwise we'll just stand adjourned. How about that? Perfect.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm not going